The chevrons locked in sequence, each engagement echoing through the gate room with mechanical precision. Airmen positioned behind blast barriers raised their P-90s as the seventh symbol locked into place, and the kawoosh exploded outward before settling into the shimmering event horizon. Standard Protocol. Another routine MALP transmission from P4X-347, a routine check on mineral deposits that might contain naquadah. Except the wormhole didn't behave routinely. The event horizon rippled violet instead of blue, energy crackling across the surface in patterns the computers had never recorded. Klaxons wailed. In the control room, Major Samantha Carter's fingers flew across her console, eyes widening at readings that defied physics as she understood it. General Hammond, we have a massive energy surge coming through. Carter's voice carried urgency without panic. Years of gate operations had taught her when to worry. It's not the MALP. Something else is using the wormhole as a conduit. Power levels are, sir, they're off the scale. General George Hammond leaned forward, his steady presence anchoring the chaos. Close the iris. Iris closing. The technician's hand slammed the control. Too late. A figure exploded through the event horizon a microsecond before titanium segments could seal the gateway. The sheer kinetic force of the arrival sent shockwaves rippling through the gate room. The object, no, the person, tumbled through the air in a red and blue blur, smashing into the far wall with enough impact to crack reinforced concrete. Dust and debris showered down as the intruder dropped to one knee, one fist pressed against the floor in a three-point landing that cratered the metal grating. Silence fell across the gate room, broken only by the quiet disengagement of the Stargate behind the kneeling figure. He rose slowly, and Hammond felt his breath catch. The man stood easily over 6 feet, broad-shouldered, wearing a form-fitting blue suit with red boots and a flowing red cape that defied the lack of wind in the sealed mountain complex. Most striking was the symbol emblazoned across his chest, a stylized S within a diamond shield, bold red against yellow background. The stranger's eyes, impossibly blue, swept across the gate room, taking in the armed airmen, the blast barriers, the massive concrete and steel structure built to contain threats from across the galaxy. He raised his hands slowly, palms outward in a universal gesture of peace. I don't know where I am, the man said, his voice carrying clearly despite the distance, but I mean you no harm. My name is Clark Kent. I'm from Earth, but I don't think it's the same Earth as this one. In the control room, Colonel Jack O'Neill grabbed the microphone, his trademark sarcasm sharpened by tactical wariness. Yeah, well, Clark, we get that a lot. Except usually it's snaky false gods trying to blow us up, not guys in Halloween costumes crashing through our extremely expensive defensive perimeter. Jack's eyes narrowed as he studied the figure through the reinforced glass. Carter, please tell me he's human. Carter's fingers continued their dance across sensors designed to detect Goa'uld technology, naquadah signatures, and dimensional anomalies. Her expression shifted from confusion to wonder to something approaching scientific rapture. Sir, he's definitely humanoid, but the readings are unprecedented. His cellular structure is absorbing ambient radiation, specifically, he's converting light into energy at rates that shouldn't be biologically possible. And General, she looked up at Hammond, her voice dropping. The dimensional rift that brought him here. It originated from a Goa'uld energy signature, but it's unlike anything we've encountered. Someone was trying to punch through the fabric between realities. Hammond's jaw tightened. Goa'uld experiments with dimensional travel. That was a nightmare scenario the SGC had hoped would remain theoretical. He keyed the gate room intercom. Mr. Kent, I'm General George Hammond, commander of this facility. You've arrived at a top-secret military installation through a device called the Stargate. I'm going to need you to remain calm and cooperate fully while we determine exactly what brought you here and whether you pose a threat to this facility or this world. The stranger, Clark Kent, nodded slowly, his hands still raised. I understand, General. I'm happy to cooperate. Where I come from, I work with the military and government to protect people. His gaze shifted to the Stargate, wonder crossing his features. That device, it's a wormhole generator, isn't it? Stable, controlled Einstein-Rosen bridge. The technology required, he trailed off, shaking his head. General, I need to know, what year is this, and are you under attack? The device that pulled me through, it felt wrong. Malevolent. Like something was reaching across dimensions looking for worlds to conquer. Jack and Hammond exchanged glances. The stranger's words hit uncomfortably close to accurate. Daniel, TLC, suit up, Jack ordered, already moving toward the armory. Carter, keep those sensors on him. I want to know if he so much as sneezes funny. He paused, glancing back at the figure standing calmly in the gate room, surrounded by 24 weapons trained on his position. The stranger hadn't flinched, hadn't shown fear or aggression. Just patience and what looked like genuine concern. Jack's instincts, honed through years of special operations and first contact scenarios gone sideways, whispered that this wasn't another Goa'uld trick. This felt different. But different didn't always mean safe. In the gate room, Clark Kent stood perfectly still, his enhanced hearing picking up every whispered conversation in the control room, every elevated heartbeat from the nervous airman, every mechanical hum of the facility buried deep within this mountain. His X-ray vision had already confirmed they were underground, very far underground, and the technology surrounding him was both familiar and alien. The Stargate itself radiated energy signatures he'd never encountered, yet the underlying physics felt comprehensible. What concerned him most was the residual energy clinging to his cells from the violent dimensional transit. The device that had torn him from his universe and thrown him through that wormhole hadn't been an accident. Something had reached across the multiverse deliberately, searching. And if his arrival here was part of some larger invasion plan, these people, these soldiers protecting their world, deserved to know what might be coming. The door at the base of the gate room ramp hissed open. 4 figures emerged, a tall man with graying hair and colonel's insignia, moving with the predatory grace of special forces, a woman in Air Force uniform whose sharp eyes suggested brilliant scientific mind, a civilian with glasses and scholarly bearing, and a warrior whose golden emblem and staff weapon marked him as distinctly non-human, yet clearly allied with these Earth defenders. Jack O'Neill stopped at the base of the ramp, P-90 lowered but ready. So, Clark Kent from another Earth. Let's talk about what happens next. You're going to come with us to a holding cell while we figure out if you're legit or if this is the universe's most elaborate Trojan horse. Then maybe, if you're very lucky and Carter's brain doesn't explode from trying to explain the physics, we'll discuss why a Goa'uld device ripped you out of your dimension and dropped you in our lap. Clark nodded, lowering his hands slowly. I'll cooperate completely, Colonel. But I need you to understand something. His expression grew grave. Whatever pulled me through that gateway was intelligent, powerful, and looking for something. If it found your world in the process, he met Jack's eyes directly. You need to be ready. Because if what I sensed on the other side of that dimensional rift decides your Earth looks vulnerable, you're going to need every ally you can get. The Jaffa warrior, TLC, based on the name Clark had overheard, raised an eyebrow, his deep voice resonant. You speak of threats as one familiar with defending against them. Where I come from, Clark said quietly, I've spent years protecting my Earth from threats both terrestrial and extraterrestrial. I've faced conquerors, tyrants, and beings who claimed to be gods. His gaze swept across the Stargate, recognition dawning. Something tells me you're familiar with that last category. Jack's expression shifted slightly, the sarcasm giving way to something more calculating. Yeah, you could say we've had some experience with false gods. Carter, get a medical team down here. Daniel, prep the holding cell, the nice one, with actual furniture. He looked back at Clark. Welcome to Stargate Command, Superman. Let's find out why the hell the universe thought we needed a Kryptonian. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. Indeed. Clark blinked at the name, Superman. He hadn't introduced himself with that title, yet somehow this colonel already knew. Which meant either this Earth had information about his universe, or the situation was even more complex than he'd feared. As armed escorts moved into formation around him, Clark Kent walked calmly toward whatever came next, knowing that understanding this world's threats was now as important as finding his way home. The Stargate shimmered behind them, inactive but waiting. Somewhere across the galaxy, something that had reached across dimensions registered the successful transit. And plans millennia in the making began to accelerate. The holding cell wasn't what Clark expected. Instead of bars and concrete, he found himself in a reinforced observation room with actual chairs, a table, and what looked like one-way mirrors on 2 walls. The door sealed behind him with a pneumatic hiss, and he could hear the electromagnetic locks engage. Impressive security, though he suspected he could walk through the wall if necessary. He chose not to mention that. Clark sat patiently, his superhearing tracking conversations 3 levels up where General Hammond was assembling what sounded like a crisis response team. The scientific discussions were fascinating. This world's understanding of wormhole physics was decades ahead of his Earth's public knowledge, though he suspected organizations like STR Labs might have theoretical frameworks that came close. What troubled him more were the fragments of conversation about Goa'uld System Lords and something called a sarcophagus. The tone suggested enemies, not allies. Parasitic enemies, if he was interpreting correctly. The door opened. Dr. Jackson entered first, carrying a tablet and wearing an expression of barely contained curiosity. Major Carter followed with scanning equipment that hummed with active sensors. Colonel O'Neill leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, while TLC stood sentinel beside him. So, Daniel began, setting the tablet on the table and pulling up a chair. You said you're from another Earth. That's actually not as crazy as it sounds. We've encountered alternate realities, quantum mirrors, parallel timelines. He pushed his glasses up. What's fascinating is that you arrived through our Stargate, which shouldn't be possible for interdimensional travel. The gate connects points in space, not across dimensional boundaries. Clark nodded. The device that pulled me through, I was investigating an anomaly in Metropolis when reality just tore open. There was this symbol, like a serpent with wings, and the energy felt alive. Malicious. He met Daniel's eyes. It grabbed me and threw me through what felt like multiple dimensions before I hit your wormhole. I think something used your gate as an anchor point. Carter's scanner beeped urgently. She studied the readout, frowning. Sir, he's not lying. At least, the residual dimensional energy matches a Goa'uld power signature we've been tracking. 3 weeks ago, Anubis's forces captured an ancient outpost on P7J 989. The Tartarus warned us he was researching something called a reality bridge, but we didn't think he'd achieved a working prototype. Anubis, Jack said flatly. Why is it always Anubis? The guy gets a little ancient knowledge downloaded into his wormy brain and suddenly he thinks he's Einstein meets Dracula. He is seeking to expand his domain beyond this galaxy, TLC observed, his golden emblem gleaming. If he has discovered a means to access alternate realities, he could conquer infinite worlds. The implications settled over the room like a lead blanket. Clark straightened in his chair. You're saying this Anubis deliberately pulled me here? Why? That's the million-dollar question, Jack replied. He pulled out a chair and sat backward on it, studying Clark with the intensity of someone who'd survived countless first contacts. Let's establish some baseline facts. You said you're from Earth. Do you have Stargates in your dimension? Not that I know of. My Earth has advanced technology in some areas, but nothing like stable wormhole generation. Clark hesitated, then decided honesty was the best approach with people clearly experienced in cosmic threats. My Earth does have extraterrestrial contact, though. I should be direct, I'm not originally from Earth. I'm Kryptonian. My birth planet was destroyed when I was an infant, and I was sent to Earth in an escape pod. The yellow sun of Earth's solar system grants me abilities that would seem impossible by normal human standards. Daniel's eyebrows shot up. Abilities like crashing through our iris and walking away without a scratch. The iris is that titanium barrier? Clark asked. I'm sorry about that. I wasn't trying to damage your defenses, I was tumbling through the wormhole at high velocity when I hit it. I'm extremely durable, especially under a yellow sun. I can fly, I have enhanced strength and speed, heat vision, and several other abilities derived from solar energy absorption. Carter's scanner was going haywire now. General, you need to see this. She turned the display toward the one-way mirror, speaking clearly for Hammond's benefit in the observation room beyond. His cellular structure is literally photosynthetic, but instead of converting light to chemical energy, he's converting it directly to what I can only describe as biometric power. It's the most efficient energy conversion I've ever seen. And the naquadah radiation in this facility, he's adapting to it. His cells are learning to filter it out. How strong are we talking? Jack asked, his tactical mind clearly calculating threat assessments. Clark chose his words carefully. Strong enough that I've stopped earthquakes, caught falling aircraft, and gone toe-to-toe with other beings of significant power. I try not to quantify it because the point isn't how much I can lift, it's what I choose to do with these abilities. He leaned forward. Colonel, General Hammond, I understand you have no reason to trust me. But if Anubis pulled me here as some kind of weapon or test subject, you need to know I won't be used against innocent people. Ever. That's not who I am. TLC's head tilted slightly, his expression thoughtful. You speak as one who has faced the burden of great power. The Goa'uld would see your abilities and seek to claim you as the ultimate host. Host. Clark's voice sharpened. Daniel grimaced. That's what we've been dancing around. The Goa'uld are parasitic beings, snake-like creatures that take human hosts, suppressing the host's consciousness and claiming their body. They've enslaved countless worlds across the galaxy, posing as gods to primitive cultures. Anubis is the worst of them, he's half-ascended, meaning he has knowledge and power that put him beyond the other system lords. The revulsion on Clark's face was genuine and immediate. Parasites that enslave humans. How many worlds? Thousands, Carter said quietly. The Stargate network connects to millions of planets, and the Goa'uld have dominated this galaxy for millennia. We've been fighting them for 6 years, trying to free enslaved populations and prevent them from conquering Earth. Clark stood abruptly, his hands clenched. And you think Anubis wants to do this to other dimensions? That's our working theory, Jack confirmed. Which brings us back to you, Clark. If Anubis grabbed you specifically, there's a reason. Maybe he wants to study your abilities. Maybe he wants you as a host, though good luck to any snake that tries to take over Superman's brain. He paused. Yeah, we know that name. Weird thing, about a year ago, we found some ancient text that referenced something called the Kryptonian prophecy. Daniel's been trying to translate it, but ancient is tricky. Daniel pulled up files on his tablet, excitement overtaking caution. The ancients were the builders of the Stargate network, an incredibly advanced race that ascended to a higher plane of existence millions of years ago. But some of their databases reference other realities, other timelines. There's a fragment that mentions the last son of a dying world whose symbol becomes hope across infinite skies. We thought it was metaphorical. My symbol, Clark said, touching the S on his chest. In my family's language, it means hope. The room fell silent. Carter broke it first, her scientific mind racing ahead. If the ancients knew about Kryptonians, if there's some connection between your people and theirs, she looked at Hammond's observation window. Sir, we need to run the ancient gene test. Hammond's voice came through the intercom, measured and authoritative. Agreed. Dr. Beckett, prepare the gene testing protocol. A pause. Mr. Kent, I appreciate your cooperation thus far. What Major Carter is proposing is a genetic test to determine if you possess what we call the ancient gene, a specific genetic marker that allows certain individuals to activate ancient technology. It's a simple blood test. I'm willing, Clark said immediately. If it helps you understand why I'm here and how to stop Anubis, I'll cooperate with any tests you need. Jack stood, his expression slightly less skeptical than before. Okay, here's how this plays out. We run the tests, verify you are who you say you are, and figure out if you're the universe's gift to our ongoing war with snake-faced megalomaniacs or if this is an elaborate trap. In the meantime, you're confined to SGC until we know more. He moved toward the door, then paused. One question, Clark. Your Earth, do you have anyone there? Family, friends, people who'll notice you're gone. Clark's expression clouded. Yes. My parents, colleagues, friends. They'll be worried. He thought of Perry White, Lois, Jimmy, his mother in Smallville. I need to get back. But not until I understand what Anubis is planning. If there's a chance he could reach my Earth or others. Then we stop him, Jack finished. Welcome to the SGC, where saving the galaxy before breakfast is just another Tuesday. He glanced at TLC. Get him cleared through medical. And someone find him clothes that don't scream alien superhero at a costume party. We're drawing enough attention as it is. As the team filed out, Daniel lingered. For what it's worth, Clark, I believe you. I've met enough aliens, ascended beings, and alternate reality versions of people to recognize genuine good intentions. He smiled slightly. Plus, anyone who looks that uncomfortable hearing about parasitic body snatchers is probably not working for them. Clark returned the smile, grateful for the scientist's trust. Thank you, Dr. Jackson. I hope I can help you fight these Goa'uld. Where I come from, no one gets to enslave humanity. Not while I'm alive to stop it. Daniel nodded and left, and Clark was alone again. Through the walls, he could hear medical teams assembling, scientists debating the physics of his arrival, and General Hammond coordinating with someone called the Tartarus about Anubis's reality bridge project. But what concerned him most was a conversation 3 levels down, where sensors had detected unusual energy signatures in the gate room, residual traces from his arrival that were growing stronger, not dissipating. Something had followed him through. Or something was trying to. Clark closed his eyes, extending his senses through the mountain. If a threat was coming to these people because of him, he would face it. That was the promise he'd made when he chose to become Superman, regardless of which Earth he stood upon. The symbol on his chest, hope, would mean something here too. The needle bent against Clark's skin. Dr. Janet Fraser stared at the broken syringe in disbelief, then at the man sitting calmly on the examination table. She'd been SGC's chief medical officer long enough that alien physiology rarely surprised her anymore. She'd treated Jaffa, Tartarus, humans mutated by ancient devices, and once, memorably, Thor after a particularly bad replicator encounter. This was different. Mr. Kent, I'm going to need you to puncture your own skin, she said, maintaining professional composure while her medical training screamed that this was impossible. Just a small prick, enough to draw blood for the gene test. Clark extended his finger, concentrating. His heat vision flickered at microscopic intensity, creating a pinpoint wound. A single drop of crimson blood welled up before the skin sealed itself instantly. Carter, monitoring with her scanner, made a noise of scientific fascination. His cellular regeneration is instantaneous, she breathed. Janet, his body is repairing damage at the molecular level faster than we can measure. Fraser collected the blood sample with practiced efficiency, her mind already racing through the medical implications. I'll run this through the ancient gene sequencer, but I'm also testing for everything else: viral load, bacterial resistance, cellular structure. If Anubis wanted you for a host, I need to know if a Goa'uld symbiote could even integrate with your biology. Speaking of which, Jack said from the doorway, we've got a situation. Carter, conference room, now. Daniels finished translating more of that ancient text, and apparently it gets really interesting. He looked at Clark. You too, Superman. If this prophecy is about you, you should hear it. 5 minutes later, Clark found himself in a briefing room surrounded by SG-1, General Hammond, and a holographic projection of what Daniel explained was a Takare named Selmak, sharing the body of Major Carter's father, Jacob. The dual voice that emerged from the hologram carried both human concern and alien wisdom. George, if what SG-1 is reporting is accurate, Anubis has achieved something we feared was impossible. The reality bridge isn't just theoretical, he's opened a stable dimensional gateway. Daniel stood beside a display showing ancient text, his translation notes scattered across multiple screens. Okay, so here's what we know. The ancients documented encounters with what they called the Travelers, beings from parallel realities who possessed abilities that seemed impossible even by ancient standards. Most of the records were destroyed or lost, but this fragment survived in an outpost database. He pulled up the text, ancient symbols flowing across the screen with English translation below. When the false gods reach beyond their dominion to grasp at infinite conquest, the last son of the dying world shall become the key. His symbol, worn across the heart, carries hope to the enslaved. But beware, the half-ascended one sees not an ally, but the perfect vessel. Power without equal, will without corruption, body without weakness. Should the serpent claim the son of two worlds, no force in this reality shall stand against the union. Silence filled the conference room. Well, that's not ominous at all, Jack muttered. Clark's jaw tightened. He wants me as a host. Anubis pulled me here specifically to take over my body. It's worse than that, Carter said, her fingers flying over her laptop. I've been analyzing the energy signature from your arrival. The dimensional rift isn't fully closed, it's been held open at minimal bandwidth, creating a tracking beacon. Anubis knows exactly where you are. TLC's expression darkened. If Anubis believes Kal-El to be the prophesied vessel, he will commit all resources to capturing him. No system lord would allow such power to fall into a rival's hands. How long until he makes his move? Hammond asked. Jacob's face, Selmak's intelligence shining through, showed grim certainty. The Takare intelligence network reports Anubis's mothership left his occupied territory 3 days ago, destination unknown. If he's coming to Earth, he paused. You have hours, maybe less. Then we need to move Clark somewhere safer, Daniel suggested. Off-world, somewhere the Goa'uld can't track. No, Clark said firmly. All eyes turned to him. If Anubis is coming, running will only delay the inevitable. And if his forces attack Earth looking for me, innocent people will die. He stood, his presence filling the room with quiet intensity. I didn't ask to be brought here, but I won't let this world suffer because of me. We make our stand here, and we make it clear that I'm not going to be anyone's host. Jack studied him for a long moment. You understand what you're volunteering for? Anubis isn't some bank robber or street-level threat. He commands motherships that can glass entire planets, he has legions of Jaffa warriors, and he's half-ascended, meaning he's got powers that make most aliens look like kindergartners. Colonel, where I come from, I've faced world-ending threats, Clark replied. I've fought beings who considered themselves gods, tyrants with armies, and monsters that wanted to reshape reality itself. I'm not underestimating Anubis, but I won't run from him either. Carter looked up from her laptop, her expression urgent. General, if we're doing this, we need to prepare. SGC's defenses are designed to stop Goa'uld ground forces and Hatak orbital bombardment, but Anubis has upgraded ships with ancient technology. Our normal protocols won't be enough. Then we adapt, Hammond said decisively. He turned to Jacob's hologram. Selmak, we need Takare support. Any ships you can spare, any intelligence on Anubis's fleet composition. Already en route, Jacob confirmed. But George, even with our help, if Anubis brings his full force to bear on Earth, this could trigger a system lord response. They won't allow him to gain such a significant advantage. Let them come, TLC said, his voice carrying the weight of a warrior who'd spent decades serving false gods before finding freedom. The free Jaffa will stand with Tauri. Word has already spread through the rebellion, the one who crashes through Iris without harm, who fears no Goa'uld. They wish to see if the prophecy speaks truth. Daniel blinked. Wait, word has already spread. How? Jaffa communication networks are extensive, Daniel Jackson, TLC replied. News of Kal-El's arrival reached Bratak within the hour. Even now, rebel forces move into position, hoping to witness the first confrontation between the Man of Steel and the false gods. Clark absorbed this, realizing his arrival had already caused ripples across this galaxy. He thought of his role on his Earth, symbol, inspiration, hope made manifest. Perhaps that role transcended dimensions. The conference room door burst open. A technician rushed in, face pale. General, we have unscheduled off-world activation. The iris is closed, but something's transmitting through, it's an audio signal. Hammond moved swiftly to the control room, the team following. On the monitors, the Stargate blazed with active connection, and through the speakers came a voice that dripped with malevolent satisfaction. I know you can hear me, humans of the Towery. The voice was layered, human tones overlaid with something ancient and inhuman. I am Anubis, first among System Lords, heir to the knowledge of the ancients. You harbor something that belongs to me. A prize I have sought across dimensional barriers, prophesied by the ancients themselves. Clark stepped forward, his enhanced hearing picking up subtle harmonics in the transmission. Whatever Anubis was, he was no longer fully organic, technology and biology merged into something hybrid. The Kryptonian will be mine, Anubis continued. His body shall become my vessel, his power my weapon. I offer you this, surrender him within the hour, and Earth will be spared. Resist, and I shall demonstrate why even the System Lords fear my ascended wrath. Your Asgard allies cannot help you, they are occupied with their replicator plague. Your primitive weapons mean nothing against my fleet. You have 1 hour to decide if your world lives or dies. The transmission ended. The Stargate disengaged. Jack broke the silence. Well, he's not big on subtlety. He's trying to isolate us, Carter observed. Making sure we know we're on our own, hoping we'll give Clark up to save Earth. Hammond's expression was granite. That's not happening. Colonel O'Neill, prepare SG-1 and all available teams for base defense. Major Carter, I want every weapon system we have online and charged. TLC, coordinate with your Jaffa contacts, anyone who wants to strike against Anubis should know where to find him. He turned to Clark. Mr. Kent, I won't order you to fight. But if you're willing. I'm willing, Clark interrupted. This is my fight as much as yours now. Anubis made it personal when he tore me away from my home. His eyes blazed with determination. Where I come from, I've stood alone against impossible odds. Here, it looks like I have allies. So let's show this false god what happens when he threatens Earth, any Earth. Daniel cleared his throat. Before we all go full 300 on Anubis, I should mention something else from the ancient text. There's a reason the prophecy warns about Anubis claiming Superman. It's not just about his physical power, it's about what Clark represents. The Goa'uld maintain control through fear and the illusion of divinity. But Superman, he gestured at Clark's symbol. You're hope incarnate. You're everything the Goa'uld claim to be but aren't, genuinely powerful, genuinely selfless. If the Jaffa see you stand against a system lord, if enslaved populations across the galaxy hear that a real hero exists, the foundation of their empire cracks, TLC finished. This is why Anubis acts with such urgency. Kal-El's very existence threatens all Goa'uld, not through conquest, but through inspiration. Clark felt the weight of that responsibility settle across his shoulders, familiar and yet different from his Earth. Here, an entire galaxy suffered under tyranny that had persisted for millennia. One battle wouldn't free them all, but it could spark hope in the darkness. Then let's give them something to hope for, Clark said quietly. Alarms shrieked through the facility. Carter's hands flew across her console, her face draining of color. "General, we have hyperspace windows opening in Earth orbit. Multiple contacts, at least 6 Hatak motherships. Anubis didn't give us an hour. He's already here." Through the mountain walls, Clark's enhanced hearing detected the shifting of massive objects in space above. His X-ray vision couldn't penetrate to orbit, but he didn't need it to know the fight had arrived sooner than anyone expected. Anubis had come for his prize. And Superman, stranded on an Earth not his own, surrounded by warriors who fought gods and won, prepared to make the half-ascended Goa'uld regret reaching across dimensions. The mountain shook. Staff weapon fire rained down on Cheyenne Mountain's exterior defenses as Anubis's Al-Kesh bombers swept through the atmosphere. Ground-based railguns and missile batteries responded, their fire coordinated by NORAD systems, but the Goa'uld shields held against most conventional weapons. SGC personnel moved with practiced efficiency, sealing blast doors and manning defensive positions throughout the facility's 28 levels. Clark stood in the gate room, watching the tactical display as Carter relayed orbital positions. 6 Hatak motherships hung in high orbit, their weapons locked on the mountain but not firing, yet. Anubis wanted him alive and intact. The ground assault was meant to breach the facility and extract him, not destroy him. "That's our advantage," Jack said, loading his P-90 with practiced ease. "He won't use his big guns because he needs you breathing. Makes him predictable." "How long before his forces reach the gate room?" Clark asked. 20 minutes if they breach the upper levels," Hammond replied from the control room. "Colonel O'Neill, SG-1 will hold the primary choke point at level 19. SG-3 through SG-6 are positioned at secondary defensive positions. Mr. Kent." "I'll handle the orbital threat," Clark said, his voice carrying absolute certainty. "If Anubis wants me, he can face me directly. But I won't let his ships bombard this mountain or threaten this planet." Carter looked up sharply. "Clark, those are capital ships. Even with your abilities, the vacuum of space won't be a problem," Clark assured her. "I don't need to breathe, and I've fought in the upper atmosphere before. My biology can handle the radiation and cold." He met her eyes. "Major, I know you fought the Goa'uld for years. Trust me when I say I can do this." Daniel adjusted his glasses nervously. "The ancient prophecy mentions you standing against Anubis, but it's frustratingly vague on the outcome. Just, be careful up there, okay? We've lost too many good people to these false gods." TLC stepped forward, his staff weapon held with ceremonial precision. He pressed his fist to his chest in salute. "Kal-El of Krypton, you honor the free Jaffa with your courage. When word spreads that you faced Anubis in orbit above Tauri, many will find the strength to throw off their chains. Fight well." Clark returned the gesture, moved by the warrior's respect. "I fight for everyone enslaved by the Goa'uld, TLC. And I'll come back. That's a promise." Jack studied him for a moment, then extended his hand. "Go show that snake-wrapped megalomaniac why pulling Superman into his dimension was the worst idea since the time Daniel got us trapped in a time loop." He paused. "Long story. You buying the first round when you get back?" Clark shook his hand firmly, then turned toward the gate room's massive blast doors. "I'll need an exit that leads to the surface. Somewhere I can launch from without compromising your defenses." "Secondary silo entrance, level 5, Hammond directed. "Airmen, escort Mr. Kent and unseal the outer doors on my authorization." As Clark moved toward the corridor, Carter called out, "Clark, wait." She rushed over, pulling a small device from her vest. "This is a radio beacon. It's tuned to SGC frequencies and should work in low orbit. If you need extraction or support, I'll call," Clark promised, attaching the device to his belt. "But Major, if Anubis's forces break through your defenses down here, don't wait for me. Get the Stargate buried and evacuate personnel to your Alpha site." "Not happening," Jack said flatly. "We don't abandon our people. And you're one of ours now, whether you like it or not. The simple declaration caught Clark off guard. In less than 2 hours, these soldiers had accepted him, trusted him, and welcomed him as one of their own. It reminded him of his first days with the Justice League, that sense of belonging among people who understood the weight of protecting others. He nodded once, then followed the airman through SGC's corridors. 5 minutes later, Clark stood in an auxiliary silo that normally housed emergency aircraft. The ceiling doors ground open, revealing the night sky over Colorado, and beyond it, the faint glints of Goa'uld motherships reflecting Earth's moonlight. He could hear the ship's engines, the movement of personnel within them, the thrum of weapons charging. His enhanced vision picked out details impossible for human eyes, the pyramid shape of Hatak vessels, the death gliders launching in patrol formations, and at the center of the formation, one ship larger than the rest, its hull darker, its energy signature radiating wrongness even from this distance. Anubis's flagship. Clark crouched slightly, then launched skyward. The acceleration was tremendous. Air screamed past him as he broke the sound barrier within seconds, Mach 2, Mach 5, faster still. The atmosphere thinned around him as he climbed, the blue sky darkening to purple to black. Below, Earth spread out in breathtaking beauty, a planet worth protecting, regardless of which dimension it belonged to. His radio crackled. "Superman, this is SGC Actual," Hammond's voice came through. "We're tracking your ascent. You're approaching the first Hatak at, good lord, Mach 15 and climbing. Mr. Kent, their sensors have locked on to you." "Let them," Clark replied, his voice calm despite the thin atmosphere. "I want their attention." Death gliders peeled off from the nearest mothership, dozens of them, their weapons blazing. Energy bolts streaked toward him, primitive plasma weapons, but enough concentrated fire could potentially cause him problems. Clark weaved through the incoming fire with superhuman precision, his speed making him nearly impossible to target. He reached the first glider squadron in seconds. Rather than destroy them, the pilots were likely enslaved Jaffa. He focused his heat vision in controlled bursts, disabling their weapons and engines without breaching cockpits. Gliders spiraled out of control, their pilots alive but neutralized. "Hammond, can your people recover disabled gliders?" Clark asked. "I'm not killing Jaffa who might be fighting against their will." A pause, then, affirmative. "We'll coordinate recovery operations." "Clark, you're getting close to the Hatak formation. Their main weapons are charging." Clark accelerated further, pushing into the black of space. The cold didn't affect him, his cells were still converting residual solar energy, and Earth's sun, while slightly different from his home dimensions, provided everything he needed. The nearest Hatak loomed before him, a golden pyramid over 600 meters long. Gun ports opened across its surface, and staff cannons larger than buildings swiveled to track him. The ship fired, brilliant energy bolts designed to shatter other capital ships. Clark didn't dodge. He flew straight through the first barrage, the staff weapon fire washing over his invulnerable form like water. The energy stung slightly, naquadah-based weapons hit harder than conventional explosives, but caused no real damage. He slammed into the Hatak's hull at full speed. The impact resonated through the entire ship. Clark's fists tore into the naquadah-reinforced hull, ripping through armor plating designed to withstand ship-to-ship combat. Inside, he could hear Jaffa warriors shouting in alarm, crew scrambling to respond to the impossible, a single being boarding a mothership in the vacuum of space. His heat vision carved through support structures, deliberately targeting weapon systems and engine components while avoiding crew quarters. The ship shuddered violently. "SGC, Target 1's weapons are disabled," Clark reported, tearing another gun emplacement from its housing and hurling it away from the ship. "They're retreating." "Copy that," Carter's voice crackled through. "Superman, the other Hataks are pulling back to high orbit, but Anubis's flagship is moving forward." Oh no. Major? "He's positioning between you and Earth." "Clark, he's charging his main weapon, and it's not pointed at you." Clark's enhanced vision confirmed it. Anubis's massive flagship, darker and more menacing than the standard Hatak design, had maneuvered into position. But its primary weapon wasn't tracking Superman's position. It was aimed directly at Cheyenne Mountain. "Anubis is transmitting," Hammond said, his voice tight with controlled fury. "Audio coming through now." The voice that filled Clark's radio was the same layered malevolence from before. "Kryptonian, you demonstrate impressive power, as the prophecy promised. But power without wisdom is meaningless. I will give you one final opportunity, surrender yourself to me, or I will reduce your new allies to atoms. The Tauri have shown you hospitality. Will you repay them with ash and death?" Clark's hands clenched. Below, the SGC housed hundreds of personnel, soldiers, scientists, people who had welcomed him despite having every reason to be suspicious. People who fought impossible odds every day to protect their world from beings like Anubis. And Anubis knew Clark wouldn't let them die. "Don't do it," Jack's voice cut in. "Clark, we've dealt with this kind of blackmail before. The second you give yourself up, he glasses us anyway. That's how these bastards work." "Colonel O'Neill speaks truth," TLC added. "Anubis has destroyed entire worlds after they surrendered. His word is worthless." Clark hovered in the void, Earth rotating slowly beneath him, Anubis's weapon charging above. The tactical situation was clear: if he surrendered, everyone died. If he fought, everyone might die anyway. But at least they'd die fighting. Unless he found a third option. "Major Carter," Clark said quickly, "that weapon, how fast does it fire?" "The charging sequence takes approximately 40 seconds from initialization to, wait, you're thinking. Can I reach the weapon before it fires?" A rapid calculation. "The flagship is 8,000 kilometers out. At your current speed. Clark, even if you reach it in time, the weapon's aperture is reinforced with ancient enhanced shielding. You'd need to generate massive kinetic force to." "I've punched through planets before," Clark interrupted. Not entirely true, but he'd certainly moved continental plates and survived impacts that would vaporize cities. "If I can reach the weapon and disable it before it fires." 30 seconds to firing solution, Carter warned. Clark didn't wait for confirmation. He oriented on Anubis's flagship and accelerated, pushing his speed to the absolute limit. The vacuum of space meant no air resistance, nothing to slow him down. Earth became a shrinking marble behind him as he streaked toward the massive ship. 20 seconds. The flagship grew in his vision, its dark hull bristling with weapons, its primary cannon glowing with building energy. He could see Jaffa through the hull, their heat signatures moving in formation. And deeper, in what had to be the throne room, a presence that registered as neither fully organic nor technological, something hybrid and wrong. 10 seconds. Staff cannons fired at him, a desperate attempt to intercept. Clark weaved through the barrage, his focus locked on the primary weapon now glowing white-hot with imminent discharge. 5 seconds. He could hear Anubis's voice, broadcasting across all frequencies, "So be it, Kryptonian. Watch as your defiance costs them everything." Clark slammed into the weapon's aperture at full speed. The impact generated a kinetic shockwave visible from Earth's surface. The weapon's charging energy had nowhere to go, contained within the barrel by Clark's invulnerable body blocking the exit. For a split second, impossible energies compressed against Kryptonian physiology. Then the weapon exploded internally. The blast tore through Anubis's flagship from the inside, secondary explosions rippling across the hull as power conduits overloaded. Clark rode the shockwave, his body protecting the weapon from discharging toward Earth while the ship's own energy tore it apart. Through the chaos, Clark heard screaming, not just Jaffa, but something else. A presence, ancient and furious, its consciousness burning with rage. Then he was through the other side of the ship, tumbling in space, his body singed but intact. Behind him, Anubis's flagship broke apart, its pieces drifting in Earth orbit. SGC, Target destroyed, Clark reported, his voice steady despite the ringing in his ears. Is the mountain safe? Carter's voice came back, filled with awe and relief. Safe. Superman, that was, we're reading massive debris field, but the flagship is neutralized. The other Hataks are jumping to hyperspace. They're retreating. Not retreating, TLC corrected grimly. Fleeing. They have witnessed what we have, a being of principle and power who cannot be conquered by false gods. But Clark wasn't celebrating. His enhanced hearing picked up something wrong, a transmission, faint but present, emanating from the largest piece of flagship debris. Anubis's voice, damaged but alive, you have 1-0, Kryptonian. I am not so easily destroyed. But you have proven yourself worthy of my personal attention. We shall meet again, and next time, I will bring the full might of my empire. The transmission ended as the debris piece activated an emergency hyperspace generator and vanished. Clark floated in the silence of space, looking down at Earth, this Earth that wasn't his home but had welcomed him, trusted him, fought beside him. He'd made an enemy today. But perhaps he'd also found something worth fighting for. The debriefing room felt too small for the significance of what had just occurred. Clark sat at the conference table, still wearing his suit. SGC personnel had offered him standard fatigues, but Carter had argued that his suit's material might have protective properties worth studying. The real reason, Clark suspected, was that the symbol on his chest had already become something more than fabric and color. It had become a statement. General Hammond stood at the head of the table, his expression carrying the weight of command decisions that had just altered Earth's position in galactic politics. Mr. Kent, on behalf of the United States Air Force and the people of Earth, I want to thank you for your actions today. Our analysts estimate Anubis's weapon would have penetrated to level 12 of this facility. Casualties would have been catastrophic. You don't need to thank me, General, Clark replied. Anubis brought this fight to your doorstep because of me. Protecting this facility was my responsibility. With respect, Clark, that's crap, Jack said bluntly, leaning back in his chair. Anubis has been gunning for Earth since before you arrived. You just gave us something we've been lacking, a big win that'll make every snakehead in the galaxy think twice. He gestured at the data streaming across the monitors. Daniel, tell him what we're picking up. Daniel pulled up transmission logs, his eyes bright with barely contained excitement. In the 3 hours since you destroyed Anubis's flagship, we've intercepted over 40 communications across the Goa'uld network. System Lords are panicking. They're demanding to know what weapon Earth used, whether the Asgard intervened, if we've reverse-engineered ancient technology. He looked at Clark. None of them realize it was one person. And the Jaffa, Clark, you're already becoming a legend. TLC activated a holographic display showing Jaffa communication networks. Master Bratak has sent word through the rebellion. Jaffa across 12 worlds witnessed your battle through long-range sensors. They speak of Kal-El, the warrior who needs no army, who stands against the false gods without fear. Many who wavered in their faith in the rebellion now find courage. Clark absorbed this, understanding the implications. I didn't do this to become a symbol. I just did what was necessary. That's exactly why it matters, Carter said, pulling up her analysis. The Goa'uld maintain power through the illusion of divine authority. They claim to be gods, superior to humans in every way. But you just proved that genuine power, power used to protect rather than oppress, doesn't need worshippers or slaves. You fought for people you barely know, asking nothing in return. She met his eyes. That's the kind of hero the galaxy hasn't seen in millennia. Not since the ancients walked among us. Speaking of ancients, Daniel interjected, Janet finished your gene test. Clark, you need to see this. Dr. Fraser entered the briefing room, carrying a tablet with test results. Her expression mixed medical fascination with something approaching reverence. Mr. Kent, your genetics are extraordinary. As expected, you're not human, your cellular structure is radically different. But what's remarkable is this. She pulled up a genetic sequence. You carry markers that are compatible with ancient technology. Not identical to the ATA gene we see in humans, but functionally similar. It's as if your Kryptonian biology and ancient genetics share a common ancestor. Clark leaned forward, studying the data. How is that possible? The ancients were from this dimension, my people from another. That's what we're trying to figure out, Daniel said, his academic excitement breaking through. The ancients documented encounters with other realities, but most of those records were destroyed or lost when they ascended. What if the ancients and Kryptonians both descended from an even older race? Something that existed before dimensional separation? Or, Carter added, what if the ancients deliberately seeded genetic compatibility across multiple realities? They were incredibly advanced, they might have had reasons to create connections between dimensions. Hammond cleared his throat, redirecting the conversation with practiced efficiency. Fascinating as this is, we need to address immediate concerns. Clark, your gene compatibility means you can activate ancient technology. That makes you an incredible asset, but it also makes you an even bigger target. Every faction in this galaxy, Goa'uld, Tartarus, even some of our allies, will want access to you. The Tartarus already do, Jacob's voice announced as his hologram flickered to life. The dual-toned voice of Selmac carried through. George, the High Council has requested a meeting with Kal-El. They believe he could help activate ancient devices we've recovered but couldn't use. There's also the matter of his biology. Understanding how he resists Goa'uld implantation could revolutionize our fight against the System Lords. I'm willing to meet with them, Clark said. If my presence here can help end the Goa'uld threat. It's not that simple, Jack interrupted. The Tartarus are allies, mostly, but they have their own agenda. They'll want to study you, test you, maybe ask you to do things that cross lines. We've been down this road before with alien allies who thought humans were tools to be used. TLC nodded gravely. There is wisdom in O'Neill's caution. The Tartarus fight the Goa'uld, but they remain symbiotes who require hosts. Some among them view humans as resources, not equals. Then I'll make my position clear from the start, Clark said firmly. I'll help anyone fighting the Goa'uld, but I'm not a weapon to be aimed or a specimen to be dissected. I'm a person making a choice to stand against tyranny. A slight smile crossed Hammond's face. Spoken like someone who's dealt with government bureaucracy before. Very well. We'll arrange a meeting with the Tartarus, but on our terms and our timeline. He turned to Carter. Major, status on the ancient outpost Anubis was using for his reality bridge project? Carter pulled up tactical data. P7J-989 is still under Goa'uld control, but our intel suggests Anubis's forces are in disarray after losing his flagship. The Tartarus believe the reality bridge device is still there, and it's still active. That means I have a way home, Clark finished, hope and conflict warring in his expression. But if we shut it down, we might prevent Anubis from pulling more beings from other dimensions. Or we study it first, Daniel suggested. Learn how it works, maybe find a controlled way to send you home while preventing Anubis from using it for conquest. The ancient technology there could. Alarms blared through the facility. Hammond moved to the control room, the team following. On the monitors, the Stargate activated without authorization, chevrons locking in rapid sequence. Unscheduled off-world activation, the technician called. Receiving IDC, it's SG-7. Sir, they're transmitting emergency codes. Audio only, heavy interference. The speakers crackled with the sound of weapons fire and shouting. Major Griff's voice came through, strained and desperate. SGC, this is SG-7 actual. We are under heavy fire on P2X-555, Jaffa forces, at least 200 strong. They've got us pinned in the temple complex. We have wounded N, the transmission cut to static, then returned. Ancient device here, glowing symbols, they're trying to. The connection died as the Stargate disengaged. Hammond's expression hardened. Colonel O'Neill, prepare SG-1 for immediate rescue operation. SG-3 and SG-5 as backup. I'm going with them, Clark said, already moving toward the gate room. Jack turned, eyebrow raised. No offense, Superman, but you've been here for 6 hours. You don't know our protocols, you've never been through the gate on foot, and SG-7 is dying while we debate, Clark interrupted, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd led teams into danger before. Colonel, I can fly faster than any Al-Kesh, I can scout the situation without risking additional personnel, and I'm functionally immune to staff weapons. Use me as advance reconnaissance, I'll locate SG-7, assess enemy strength, and report back through Carter's radio beacon before you come through. Hammond considered for exactly 3 seconds. Do it. But Mr. Kent, you follow Colonel O'Neill's tactical command once SG-1 arrives. This is a rescue operation, not a frontal assault. Understood? Understood, General. Carter, dial P2X 555, Jack ordered, then grabbed Clark's shoulder. Ground rules, find our people, don't engage unless absolutely necessary, and for God's sake, don't break anything ancient. We have terrible luck with ancient devices, last time Daniel touched one, he ended up temporarily ascended. Clark nodded, filing that information away for later questions, and moved to the gate room as the Stargate began its dialing sequence. Chevron after chevron locked, the familiar mechanical precision that he was beginning to recognize as the heartbeat of SGC operations. P2X 555 is a Goa'uld-occupied world, Daniel called down from the control room, pulling up mission files. SG-7 was on a reconnaissance mission, there's an ancient outpost in the northern hemisphere. If the Jaffa are trying to access a device there, then we get our people out before they activate something that kills everyone, Jack finished. He looked at Clark. Welcome to the fun part of gate travel, when everything goes sideways and we make it up as we go. The 7th chevron locked. The kawoosh erupted, then stabilized into the shimmering blue event horizon. Clark approached the Stargate, feeling the energy radiating from it, stable, controlled, yet somehow alive. This device connected worlds, civilizations, destinies. In his dimension, he'd flown between planets, but this was different. This was technology that made the galaxy accessible to everyone, not just those who could survive the vacuum. Good luck, Superman, Carter said. And Clark? Come back safe. We've kind of gotten used to having you around. Clark smiled, then stepped through the event horizon. The sensation was unlike anything he'd experienced. His body was broken down into energy, transmitted through a stable wormhole across thousands of light years, and reconstituted on the other side, all in less than a second. His Kryptonian biology registered every moment of the process, and for a microsecond, he existed simultaneously in 2 places, quantum entangled across impossible distance. Then he was through. Clark emerged onto an alien world under a sunset-red sky. Twin moons hung on the horizon, and the air was thinner than Earth's, though breathable for humans. Before him sprawled ancient ruins, architecture that resembled Egyptian and Greek styles mixed with technology far beyond either. And everywhere, the sounds of battle. Staff weapon fire lit the temple complex 2 kilometers distant. Clark's enhanced vision picked out details instantly. SG-7 pinned behind fallen columns, Jaffa warriors in formation advancing with discipline and overwhelming numbers, and at the temple's heart, a device glowing with ancient symbols, its activation sending pulses of energy into the sky. His enhanced hearing caught Major Griff's voice, weak but determined, fall back to secondary position. Someone get a field dressing on Reynolds, he's losing too much blood. Clark lifted into the air, accelerating toward the temple. Behind him, the Stargate would be dialing back to Earth, Jack and SG-1 preparing to follow. But every second counted, and SG-7 didn't have seconds to spare. As he streaked across the alien landscape toward the sound of weapons fire, Clark Kent made a silent promise. He didn't know how long he'd be trapped in this dimension, didn't know if he'd ever see his Earth again. But while he was here, no one would die on his watch. Not if he had the power to stop it. The symbol on his chest, hope, was about to become something more than legend to the Jaffa warriors who thought they served gods. It was about to become their reckoning. Clark arrived over the temple complex in seconds, his heat vision immediately identifying thermal signatures, 12 members of SG-7 and their allies pinned behind deteriorating cover, facing approximately 200 Jaffa warriors organized in classical phalanx formation. The Jaffa were advancing methodically, their staff weapons firing in coordinated volleys that kept the humans suppressed. But what concerned Clark more was the device at the temple's center, a crystalline structure rising 20 feet high, covered in glowing ancient symbols that pulsed with increasing frequency. Energy arced between the crystals, and the air around it shimmered with dimensional instability. He'd seen similar distortions once before. 6 hours ago, when Anubis's reality bridge had pulled him from his dimension. Clark descended rapidly, landing between SG-7's position and the advancing Jaffa with enough force to crack the ancient stone beneath his boots. The impact sent a shockwave rippling outward, dust billowing in all directions. The weapon's fire stopped. 200 Jaffa warriors stared at the figure who had fallen from the sky like a meteor, his red cape settling around him, the symbol on his chest gleaming in the alien sunset. Major Griff, blood streaming from a head wound, gaped from behind his column. "What the hell?" "Stay down, Major," Clark called, his voice carrying clearly across the battlefield. "SG-1 is 30 seconds behind me. Can your wounded be moved?" Reynolds took a staff blast to the chest. "He's critical," Griff responded, his military training overriding his shock. "Who are you?" "Someone who's getting you home." The Jaffa commander stepped forward, his armor more ornate than his warriors, a golden serpent emblazoned on his forehead, the mark of Apophis, though Clark didn't know it yet. When he spoke, his voice carried the arrogance of one who'd spent decades enforcing a false god's will. "You dare interfere with the servants of Apophis? We seek only the rebel Jaffa who hide among the towery soldiers. Surrender them, and the rest may leave through the Chappai." Clark's expression hardened. "I don't negotiate with slavers. Put down your weapons and leave, or I'll put you down." The commander laughed, a sound echoed by his warriors. "You are one. We are legion. You will." He never finished. Clark moved. One moment he stood 30 meters from the Jaffa line. The next, he was in their midst, moving faster than their eyes could track. He disarmed the first warrior with surgical precision, crushing the staff weapon and lifting the Jaffa bodily, throwing him backwards into 3 others. They tumbled like bowling pins. Staff weapons fired in panic, plasma bolts converging on Clark's position. He stood unmoved as the energy washed over him, his invulnerability rendering their weapons ineffective. When the barrage ended, he was completely unharmed, not even his suit singed. "Last chance," Clark said calmly. "Leave now." The Jaffa commander's eyes widened with recognition and horror. "The prophecy," he whispered. "The Kryptonian. You are real." "Very real," Clark confirmed. "And very tired of people who hurt innocents in the name of false gods." The commander made a tactical decision born of self-preservation. "Fall back. Return to the Tel-Tac. Inform Apophis that." "Nobody's informing anybody," Jack O'Neill's voice called out as SG-1 emerged from the Stargate, weapons raised. "This is a restricted planet, and you're all under arrest for being giant pains in our collective ass. Also, nice entrance, Superman." "Subtle." TLC strode forward, his presence causing immediate recognition among the Jaffa. Former First Prime of Apophis, now the greatest traitor in Goa'uld history. "Warriors of Apophis," he called in Goa'uld, his voice resonating with authority. "I am TLC. You have heard of me. You know I speak truth when I say the gods are false. This warrior, he gestured to Clark, proves it. A being of genuine power who needs no Jaffa army, no human slaves, no claims of divinity. He fights because it is right, not because he demands worship. Several Jaffa warriors lowered their weapons, confusion and doubt warring on their faces. Do not listen to the Chevalier, the commander shouted. He is. Clark's heat vision lanced out, precise and controlled, cutting through the commander's staff weapon and melting it into slag. The commander dropped the superheated metal with a cry of pain. The word is traitor, Clark said quietly. But TLC didn't betray anything worth loyalty. He freed himself. You can do the same. The Kryptonian offers you what no Goa'uld ever has, TLC continued, moving among the Jaffa with Bratak's teachings evident in every word. Choice. Leave now, and live to see your families. Remain, and face a warrior against whom your weapons are useless. But know this, if you choose freedom, the rebellion welcomes you. We are Jaffa. We were made to serve false gods, but we can choose to serve justice instead. The standoff held for a tense moment. Then, one young Jaffa, barely more than a boy, lowered his staff weapon. I would choose freedom, he said, his voice shaking. If it truly exists. It does, Clark assured him. And you'll live to see it. That broke the stalemate. Weapons lowered one by one, Jaffa warriors stepping back. The commander, seeing his control evaporate, made one last desperate move. He activated a communicator on his bracer, likely calling for air support. Carter, incoming bombers. Jack called. 2 Al-Kesh, coming in hot. Carter confirmed, her scanner active. ETA 2 minutes. Clark, can you? Jack started. On it. Clark launched skyward, leaving a sonic boom in his wake. Daniel rushed to SG-7's position, his medical training kicking in as he assessed casualties. We need to get Reynolds through the gate now. Major Griff, can you walk? I'll manage, Griff grunted, being helped up by another team member. But we can't leave without securing that device. It activated when the Jaffa tried to interface with it. I think they accidentally triggered some kind of countdown. Carter ran her scanner over the ancient device, her expression growing alarmed. Oh, this is bad. This is very bad. Daniel, this isn't just an ancient device, it's a dimensional anchor point. It's connected to the same network Anubis used to pull Clark through. Meaning what? Jack demanded, covering their position as the Jaffa began retreating toward their Teltac cargo ships. Meaning if this thing fully activates, it'll create a stable dimensional gateway, Daniel breathed, studying the symbols. Jack, this could open a permanent door between our dimension and others. The energy required alone would. The device pulsed violently, and reality rippled. Through the shimmering air, figures began to materialize. Not Goa'uld. Not human. Something else entirely. Beings composed of crystalline structures, their forms shifting and unstable, radiating energy that made Carter's scanner scream warnings. Contact! Jack shouted. Unknown hostiles materializing around the device. The crystalline beings moved with alien grace, their attention fixed on the dimensional gateway device. One turned toward SG-1, and when it spoke, the sound was like breaking glass. Primitive organics. You have activated the beacon. The harvest begins. I really hate it when people say things like harvest, Jack muttered, firing his P-90. The rounds passed through the crystalline being without effect, embedding themselves in the temple walls behind it. They're partially phased. Carter shouted. Existing between dimensions, conventional weapons can't touch them. TLC's staff weapon fired, energy bolts passing through the beings with equal ineffectiveness. The creatures advanced, their crystalline hands reaching toward the nearest SG-7 member. Clark slammed down between them, having dispatched the Al-Kesh bombers in orbit. His fist connected with the crystalline being, and unlike bullets or staff blasts, his punch landed solid. The creature shattered into fragments that dissolved into light. "They're solid to me," Clark reported. "Get everyone to the gate, I'll hold them off." "Negative," Jack countered. "We shut down that device first, or these things keep coming." "Carter, Daniel, figure out how to turn it off." "Superman, TLC, you're on crowd control." SG-7, fall back to the Stargate and get your wounded home. "We'll be right behind you." Major Griff didn't argue, dragging Reynolds toward the distant gate as his team provided covering fire against the few Jaffa still fighting. Clark engaged the crystalline beings, his speed and strength effective where conventional weapons failed. Each punch shattered their unstable forms, but more kept materializing through the dimensional gateway. They were scouting forces, he realized, testing this dimension's defenses. "Carter, how long to shut it down?" Jack yelled, providing cover fire that was mostly psychological at this point. "The control interface is an ancient, Daniel's translating, but it's a complex sequence." Carter's fingers flew over the crystalline controls. "The device is drawing power from the planet's core through a naquadah vein. If I can interrupt the power flow." One of the crystalline beings broke through Clark's defensive perimeter, lunging toward Carter. TLC moved to intercept, but the creature was too fast. Clark's heat vision lanced out, striking the creature mid-lunge. Unlike bullets, the concentrated solar energy affected the phased being, causing it to shriek and recoil. Clark made a mental note, directed energy weapons worked where kinetic force didn't. "Daniel, I need that translation now," Carter urged. Okay, the command sequence is, oh no." Daniel's face paled. "Jack, the shutdown protocol requires an ATA gene activation. And it has to be done manually, from inside the device's core chamber." "Inside?" Jack looked at the pulsing crystalline structure. "As in, walk into the dimensional gateway that's currently vomiting hostile aliens?" "As in, yes," Daniel confirmed grimly. "I'll do it," Clark said immediately, shattering two more crystalline beings. "I have the gene compatibility, and I can survive whatever's in there." Carter pulled up a schematic on her scanner. "Clark, the power levels inside that core are extreme. Even your invulnerability, we don't know how dimensional energy will affect Kryptonian biology." "Then we're about to find out," Clark replied. "What do I need to do?" Daniel pulled up the ancient symbols on his tablet. "There's a control crystal at the core's center. You need to remove it, physically pull it out of the socket. That'll sever the power connection and collapse the gateway. And probably cause a massive energy discharge," Carter added. "You'll need to contain the blast or it'll level everything in a 5-kilometer radius." Clark looked at the swirling dimensional gateway, crystalline beings still emerging in increasing numbers, then at the team that had accepted him, trusted him, fought beside him. "Get everyone to the Stargate. When that crystal comes out, run." "Clark," Jack started. "Colonel, you told me I'm one of yours now," Clark said, meeting his eyes. "So trust me to protect my team." Jack studied him for a long moment, then nodded sharply. 30 seconds after you go in, we're through the gate. Don't make me file paperwork saying we lost Superman on his first mission. Not planning on it." Clark turned to the device, gathering his resolve, then launched himself into the dimensional gateway. Reality shattered around him. Clark tumbled through cascading dimensions, each layer of reality pressing against his consciousness like pages in a book flipping too fast to read. He glimpsed impossible geometries, worlds where physics operated on entirely different principles, civilizations that existed as pure mathematics. His Kryptonian senses struggled to process sensory input that had no correlation to normal spacetime. Then he was through, standing in the core chamber. The space defied conventional geometry, walls curved in directions that shouldn't exist, surfaces reflecting light that hadn't been emitted yet. At the chamber's center floated a crystal the size of his fist, pulsing with power that made the naquadah generators at SGC look like flashlight batteries. Energy streams connected it to thousands of points across dimensional boundaries, each one a thread linking this reality to others. Through the dimensional barriers, Clark could see them, the crystalline beings in their native dimension, vast and terrible, their true forms incomprehensible to organic minds. What emerged into his dimension were mere fingers, testing probes from entities that existed across multiple realities simultaneously. And they had noticed him. The largest presence turned its attention toward the core chamber, and Clark felt pressure against his mind unlike anything he'd experienced. Not telepathy exactly, more like reality itself being rewritten around him, trying to redefine what Clark Kent meant in this space. He pushed back with sheer will, his Kryptonian mental fortitude holding his sense of self intact. The Ma and Pa Kent who'd raised him had taught him who he was. No alien force, no matter how powerful, would make him forget that. Clark reached for the control crystal. The moment his fingers touched it, knowledge flooded his mind, ancient technology interfacing directly with his ATA-compatible biology. He understood instantly what this device was, a beacon, left by the ancients millions of years ago as a test. When a civilization reached sufficient technological advancement to activate it, the beacon would alert the crystalline entities, the harvesters, as the ancients had called them, who would evaluate whether that civilization deserved to survive or should be consumed for resources. The ancients had barely survived their own harvest. They'd created the shutdown protocol specifically so future civilizations wouldn't accidentally trigger encounters they weren't prepared for. Clark's jaw tightened. These harvesters evaluated civilizations and found them wanting, then consumed entire worlds. They were exactly the kind of threat he'd sworn to stand against, powerful beings who decided that might gave them the right to destroy. Not today, Clark said through gritted teeth, and pulled. The crystal resisted, held in place by forces that transcended simple physics. Energy arced along Clark's arms, dimensional power trying to stop him, rewrite him, convince reality that removing the crystal was impossible. Clark pulled harder. Outside the core chamber, Jack and SG-1 were fighting a losing retreat. The crystalline beings had quadrupled in number, and more emerged every second. TLC's staff weapon fired continuously, providing suppressing fire that did nothing but by seconds. Carter worked to collapse the outer gateway while Daniel coordinated SG-7's evacuation through the Stargate. "Carter, tell me Clark's not dying in there," Jack shouted, putting a 3-round burst through a crystalline being that didn't even slow down. "The energy readings are off the scale." Carter yelled back, her scanner overwhelmed. "Sir, the dimensional stress is increasing exponentially. If the core ruptures..." A shockwave rippled out from the device, visible as warped space. Every crystalline being froze simultaneously, their attention snapping toward the core chamber. Then they began moving with desperate urgency, converging on the device. "They're trying to stop him," Daniel realized. "Jack, whatever Clark's doing, it's working, they're panicking. Then we buy him time." Jack pivoted, firing toward the advancing creatures even though he knew it was futile. TLC, grenades on the approach vectors. "Carter, forget the outer gateway, just dial Earth and get us ready to move." Inside the core, Clark felt the crystal beginning to give. The dimensional forces holding it in place were weakening as he poured every ounce of strength into the pull. His hands glowed white-hot from the energy discharge, his invulnerability tested in ways it had never been before. The Harvester's largest presence pushed against the dimensional barrier, trying to manifest more fully in this reality. If it succeeded, Clark understood instinctively, it would bring enough power to tear this planet apart looking for the one who dared interfere with their harvest. He wouldn't let it through. Clark roared, a sound born of frustration and determination and the absolute refusal to let innocent people suffer while he had power to prevent it. The crystal moved, 1 centimeter, 2. And then it came free. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. The power streams connecting to thousands of dimensional points collapsed inward, reality snapping back like overstretched elastic. The core chamber became a singularity of collapsing dimensional energy, and Clark stood at its center, the crystal clutched in his fist. He had maybe 3 seconds before the energy discharge vaporized everything. Clark's mind raced through options. He couldn't throw the crystal away, the discharge would follow it, destroying wherever it landed. He couldn't absorb the energy, even his solar-powered cells had limits, and this was power drawn from dimensional barriers themselves. But he could contain it. Clark wrapped his cape around the crystal and his hands, then curled his entire body around the bundle, making himself the containment vessel. His invulnerable physiology became a prison for energy that wanted to explode outward with the force of a small star. The pain was exquisite. Solar energy was life to Kryptonians, dimensional energy was something else entirely. It burned in ways that transcended physical damage, attacking the very concept of Clark Kent on fundamental levels. His cells screamed, his nervous system overloaded, his consciousness fragmented under the assault. But he held on. Outside, the dimensional gateway collapsed spectacularly. Crystalline beings dissolved mid-movement, pulled back to their native dimension as the beacon's connection severed. The device itself shattered into crystalline fragments that fell like glowing rain across the temple complex. The gateway's down. Carter shouted. Jack, we need to go, now. The energy feedback is. An explosion of light erupted from where the device had stood. Jack threw up an arm to shield his eyes, certain they'd just lost Superman to an ancient self-destruct sequence. When the light cleared, Clark knelt in a crater where the device had been, smoke rising from his suit, his cape singed and tattered. The control crystal lay in pieces at his feet, its glow fading. But Clark was alive, conscious, and pulling himself to his feet with visible effort. Oh, thank God, Daniel breathed. Jack activated his radio. Hammond, this is O'Neill. Package secured, hostiles neutralized, and Superman is still alive, barely. We're coming home. Clark stumbled toward them, his regeneration already working to repair the damage but slower than usual. The dimensional energy had taxed even his remarkable recovery abilities. TLC moved to support him, offering a shoulder. I am honored to fight beside you, Kal-El, TLC said quietly. You have proven yourself a warrior worthy of the greatest legends. Just did what had to be done, Clark managed, his voice rough. Did everyone make it out? SG-7 is through the gate, Reynolds is in surgery but stable, Jack reported, genuine respect in his voice. And you just saved this planet from becoming alien breakfast. So yeah, I'd say the mission was a success. Carter approached, scanner still active, her expression concerned. Clark, the dimensional energy did some damage. Your cellular structure is destabilized, you need medical attention. I'll heal, Clark assured her, though he felt weaker than he had since arriving in this dimension. The dimensional energy had drained his solar reserves, and the alien sun overhead wasn't recharging him as efficiently as he needed. Daniel was already examining the shattered crystal fragments, his archaeologist's instincts overriding caution. Jack, these fragments, they're still broadcasting on some frequency. I think they're sending out a distress call or final report to the harvesters. Meaning they know someone shut down their harvest? Jack's tactical mind immediately grasped the implications. Great. So we just made enemies of dimensional monsters. Add it to the list. Actually, Daniel said, studying his scanner readings, I think they're more confused than angry. The message seems to be asking, what stopped the harvest? They're not used to civilizations being able to fight back at all, let alone succeed. Clark looked back at the crater where he'd made his stand, then at the team around him, soldiers and scientists who faced impossible odds as routine duty, who'd accepted him without hesitation and trusted him to protect them. Then maybe it's time they learned, Clark said quietly. That some civilizations are worth more than resources. That power isn't just about who can take, it's about who chooses to protect. Jack clapped him on the shoulder carefully, mindful of his injuries. Very inspirational. Now let's get you back to the SGC before you collapse and I have to explain to Hammond how we broke Superman on his first mission. They moved toward the Stargate as a unit, SG-1 maintaining defensive positions out of habit even though the threat had passed. Carter dialed Earth, the familiar sequence of chevrons locking providing comfort after the chaos. As they walked, Clark's enhanced hearing picked up conversations among the Jaffa who had surrendered. They spoke in hushed, reverent tones, not about gods, but about the warrior who had entered the device that even Goa'uld feared, and emerged victorious. The symbol on his chest, tattered but still visible, had taken on new meaning here. But Clark's thoughts were elsewhere. The crystalline beings, the harvesters, were still out there, in dimensions beyond this one. And now they knew this reality contained beings who could resist them. That knowledge could make Earth and its allies safer, or it could paint a target on every world the SGC protected. Time would tell which. The wormhole engaged, that beautiful blue shimmer connecting this alien world to Earth. Clark stepped through with SG-1, the sensation of gate travel now familiar even to his Kryptonian senses. He emerged in the SGC gate room to find medical teams waiting, General Hammond looking both relieved and concerned, and an entire facility that had monitored the mission and witnessed what their newest ally had done. "Welcome back, Mr. Kent," Hammond said formally, but his eyes carried warmth. "Dr. Fraser, see to his injuries." Colonel O'Neill, debriefing in 1 hour. As medical personnel surrounded him, Clark caught Jack's eye. The colonel gave him a slight nod, approval from a man who'd faced gods and monsters and lived to mock them. Clark had been in this dimension less than a day. He'd fought a system lord, destroyed a flagship, saved a team, and prevented an interdimensional invasion. And somewhere in the galaxy, word was spreading. The Kryptonian was real. The prophecy was true. And the balance of power that the Goa'uld had maintained for millennia was beginning to shift. In his meditation chamber aboard a hidden mothership, Anubis received reports of the beacon's destruction and the being responsible. His hybrid consciousness, part Goa'uld, part ascended knowledge, analyzed the data with cold precision. The Kryptonian had to be his. Not just for power, but because anything that could threaten the harvesters could threaten Anubis himself. And threats had to be eliminated or controlled. Anubis began making new plans, gathering resources, preparing for the campaign that would either give him the ultimate host, or destroy the one being in this galaxy who could stand against him. 3 days after the P2X-555 incident, Clark Kent sat in SGC's recreation room, surrounded by exhausted personnel who just rotated off a 12-hour shift. He held a cup of coffee, something Daniel had insisted he try, and listened to airmen trade stories about the latest off-world missions. They'd stopped treating him like an oddity and started treating him like crew, which felt surprisingly good. His injuries from the dimensional energy had healed completely within 48 hours, faster than Dr. Fraser had predicted even with his enhanced recovery. The yellow sun of this Earth might be slightly different from his home dimensions, but it was still a yellow sun, and his cells had drunk in the energy gratefully. "Superman," Major Davis called from the doorway, using the call sign that had somehow become official. "General Hammond wants you in the briefing room. We've got company." Clark set down the coffee and followed Davis through SGC's corridors. Over the past 3 days, he'd learned the facility's layout, met dozens of personnel, and begun understanding the scope of Earth's gate operations. 22 active SG teams, thousands of gate addresses, alliances with multiple alien species, and a war that had been raging since humans first stepped through the gate. It was overwhelming and inspiring in equal measure. The briefing room contained familiar faces, SG-1, General Hammond, and 3 new arrivals whose appearance made Clark's enhanced senses alert immediately. 2 appeared human but radiated subtle wrongness his Kryptonian biology detected, shared bodies, dual consciousnesses. The third was clearly alien, his features bearing similarities to TLC but with different markings. "Mr. Kent," Hammond began formally, "allow me to introduce our Takare allies. This is Martuf, host to Lantash. Anis, host to Freya. And this is Raknor, a free Jaffa who serves as liaison to Master Bratak's forces." Clark extended his hand carefully, remembering TLC's lessons about Jaffa and Tartarus protocols. It's an honor to meet allies in the fight against the Goa'uld. Martouf's eyes flashed briefly, the symbiote taking momentary control, and when he spoke, the dual-toned voice carried both curiosity and caution. The honor is ours, Kal-El of Krypton. The Tartarus High Council has debated for 3 days whether your arrival is fortune or catastrophe. We have settled on fortune, provided certain conditions are met. Conditions? Jack said flatly. We're not negotiating Superman services like he's a piece of ancient tech you want to rent. Anise raised a hand peacefully, though her symbiote's voice emerged with clinical precision. Colonel O'Neill, please understand our position. In 3 days, Kal-El has destroyed Anubis's flagship, prevented an interdimensional invasion, and become a symbol that threatens the very foundation of Goa'uld control. System Lords are mobilizing, calling emergency councils, debating whether to unite against this new threat. The galaxy is destabilizing. Good, Clark said simply. A galaxy built on slavery and false divinity should be destabilized. Ragnar, the free Jaffa, stepped forward with a warrior's directness. The Kryptonian speaks with the fire of Bratak himself. Many Jaffa now question their gods, not because of words, but because they witnessed power that requires no worship, no army of slaves. They ask themselves, if this warrior is not a god, then perhaps neither are those we serve. That's the point, Clark replied. The Goa'uld aren't gods. They're parasites with technology. And people deserve to know the truth. Martouf exchanged a glance with Anise before continuing. The Tartarus agree philosophically. However, we must address practical concerns. Kal-El, your biology is of significant interest to our scientists. Your apparent immunity to Goa'uld implantation, your cellular regeneration, your compatibility with ancient technology, understanding these factors could provide breakthroughs in our war effort. You want to study me, Clark said, his tone neutral but his posture becoming guarded. We would like your cooperation with voluntary testing, Anise clarified. Not experimentation, consultation. You work with our scientists, share knowledge about Kryptonian physiology, allow us to understand how your abilities function. In exchange, the Tartarus offer you access to our intelligence networks, safe houses across the galaxy, and help locating the ancient device Anubis used to bring you here. That last part caught Clark's attention. You found the reality bridge? Better, Martouf said, pulling up a holographic display. We've located the research facility where Anubis developed the device, a hidden base on the planet Tartarus. Our operatives report the primary reality bridge remains there, heavily guarded. More importantly, Anubis's research archives are intact, containing data on dimensional physics that could help us send you home. Clark leaned forward, hope and caution warring in his expression. What's the catch? The catch, Jacob Carter's voice announced as his hologram flickered to life, is that Tartarus is one of the most heavily defended facilities in Anubis's empire. Getting in would require a full-scale assault that the Tartarus can't mount alone. We'd need SGC support, free Jaffa forces, and frankly, we'd need you. So you're asking me to help raid the base where I might find my way home, Clark summarized. That seems straightforward. Why all the diplomatic preamble? Daniel cleared his throat. Because the Tartarus are worried about precedent. If they help you get home, other dimensional travelers might expect the same. If they study your biology without permission, it sets a bad example for human-Tartarus relations. And if they cooperate too closely with someone as powerful as you, the System Lords might view the Tartarus as a greater threat and escalate their retaliation. Politics, Jack said with disgust. Even when fighting parasitic snake gods, there's always politics. Hammond stepped in with command authority. Mr. Kent, the decision is yours. The Tartarus are offering cooperation, not making demands. But I should point out that understanding your abilities could save lives, both human and Jaffa. And if there's a chance to send you home, we should pursue it. Clark was quiet for a long moment, his mind working through the implications. He thought of his Earth, his parents, Lois, the daily planet. He thought of the responsibilities waiting for him in Metropolis. But he also thought of the millions enslaved across this galaxy, the Jaffa who were just beginning to hope for freedom, the humans on countless worlds who lived under the threat of the Goa'uld. I'll cooperate with the testing, Clark decided. Voluntarily, as equals, not as a specimen. I'll share what I know about Kryptonian biology if it helps in the fight against the Goa'uld. And I'll join the mission to Tartarus, not just to find my way home, but because shutting down Anubis's dimensional research protects both our realities. Anissa's symbiote flashed approval. Your terms are acceptable. The Tartarus will treat you as an honored ally, not a research subject. When do we leave for Tartarus? Clark asked. 72 hours, Martouf replied. We need time to coordinate with Free Jaffa forces and prepare insertion strategies. Tartarus has orbital defense platforms, ground-based shields, and a garrison of at least 500 Jaffa loyal to Anubis. This will not be a simple extraction. Define simple in a universe where we routinely gate to alien planets and fight false gods, Jack muttered. Okay, 3 days. Carter, start mission planning. TLC, coordinate with Racnor on Jaffa support. Daniel, dig up everything we know about Tartarus from ancient databases. And Superman, don't get too comfortable. This mission's going to make P2X 555 look like a vacation. The meeting dissolved into tactical planning, but Clark noticed Racnor lingering as others filed out. The Free Jaffa approached with a warrior's directness. Kal-El, I must speak plainly, Racnor said. Master Bratak sends word, the Jaffa rebellion sees you as a turning point. Your mere existence proves the Goa'uld can be opposed. But there are some among the Free Jaffa who worry you will become a new god, that we trade one form of worship for another. Clark met his eyes seriously. I'm not a god. I'm just someone with abilities trying to do the right thing. I don't want worship or followers, I want freedom for everyone enslaved by the Goa'uld. If the Jaffa see me as inspiration to find their own strength, that's good. If they see me as a new master, that defeats the entire purpose. Racnor's expression shifted to respect. Bratak said you would speak thus. He wishes to meet you, to assess whether the prophecy speaks of salvation or merely a different form of tyranny. Will you come to Dakra when the mission concludes? The Free Jaffa Council gathers there, and your presence would have significant impact. I'll come, Clark agreed. If I'm going to be part of this galaxy's fight for freedom, I should understand the people I'm fighting alongside. Racnor pressed his fist to his chest in salute. Then I will inform Bratak. He will be pleased. And Kal-El, thank you. Not for your power, but for your principle. The Jaffa have seen power used only for domination. You show us it can be used for liberation. After Racnor departed, Clark found himself alone with SG-1 in the briefing room. Daniel pulled up tactical data on Tartarus while Carter ran simulations on orbital approach vectors. TLC meditated quietly, preparing himself mentally for the battle ahead. And Jack studied Clark with his characteristic blend of sarcasm and genuine tactical assessment. You know this is a trap, right? Jack said conversationally. Anubis lost his flagship, lost his dimensional beacon, and lost face in front of every system lord. He's not going to leave his research base lightly guarded, he's going to fortify it and wait for us to show up. I know, Clark replied. But if that research falls into the wrong hands, more beings could be pulled from other dimensions. More people like me, but maybe not ones who want to help. I can't leave that threat active. Even if it means walking into an ambush? Carter asked, her tactical mind already seeing the same problems Jack identified. Especially then, Clark said. Because if I don't, someone else will try, and they might not survive it. Daniel looked up from his research, expression troubled. Clark, there's something else you should know. I've been translating more ancient texts about the Kryptonian prophecy. There's a fragment that warns about the price of hope, that the symbol bearer will face a choice between his home and his adopted cause, and that choice will define whether he becomes savior or exile. The word settled over the room like a shroud. Clark had been avoiding thinking about that exact dilemma, the growing possibility that sending him home might require destroying the very device that could save countless beings from dimensional threats. Or worse, that the mission to retrieve him might cost lives he couldn't justify losing. "We'll deal with that when we get there," Clark said quietly. "Right now, let's focus on Tartarus." But privately, he wondered. If it came down to a choice between returning to his Earth and protecting this one, what would he decide? His parents had taught him responsibility. His adoptive world had given him purpose. But this galaxy was fighting for its very survival, and his presence here had changed the equation. The symbol on his chest meant hope. But hope, Clark was learning, often came with an impossible price. Across the galaxy, aboard a cloaked mothership in deep space, Anubis studied holographic reports from his spies. The Tartarus were mobilizing. The Tauri were planning something. And most interesting, the Kryptonian had agreed to come to Tartarus. Perfect. Anubis's hybrid consciousness, part Goa'uld cunning, part ascended knowledge, had already foreseen this possibility. The reality bridge at Tartarus was functional, heavily guarded, and rigged with a trap specifically designed for beings of immense power. The Kryptonian would come seeking a way home. Instead, he would find himself exactly where Anubis wanted him, contained, studied, and ultimately broken down until Anubis understood every secret of Kryptonian biology. And then, the ultimate host would be his. The Teltac cargo ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Tartarus's system, its cloaking device active. Inside the cramped hold, Clark stood among the strike team, SG-1, SG-3, 12 Free Jaffa warriors led by Ragnar, and 3 Tartarus operatives including Martuf. The mission profile was brutally simple: penetrate Tartarus's defenses, reach the research facility, secure or destroy the reality bridge, and extract before Anubis's reinforcements arrived. Simple on paper. Suicidal in practice. Orbital scans complete, Carter reported from the Teltac's navigation console, her face illuminated by ancient sensors the Tartarus had integrated. Tartarus has 6 defense platforms in geosynchronous orbit, overlapping fire coverage. Ground-based shield generator protects the main facility. Garrison strength estimated at 700 Jaffa, plus automated defenses. And the reality bridge? Jack asked, checking his P90 for the 3rd time, a ritual Clark recognized as nervous energy channeled into preparation. Underground, 300 meters below the primary structure, Martuf replied, his symbiote's voice carrying through. Lantash confirms the energy signature matches the device that brought Kal-El to your dimension. It's active but dormant, waiting for input. TLC studied the tactical display with a warrior's eye. The shield generator is the key. Without it, we cannot gate directly to the facility's interior. We must disable it from the ground. That's where Superman comes in, Colonel Reynolds of SG-3 said, his team checking weapons with professional efficiency. Sir, with respect, can he actually survive what we're asking? Those orbital platforms have ship-killer weapons. Clark floated slightly off the deck, testing his abilities in the cargo hold's low gravity. His solar reserves were full, his strength recovered from the dimensional energy exposure. Colonel Reynolds, I've fought in space before. I can handle the platforms. The question isn't whether you can handle them, Daniel interjected, studying ancient text on his tablet. It's whether Anubis expects you to handle them. Clark, every tactical decision we're making assumes you'll be our heavy hitter. If Anubis has prepared countermeasures specifically for you, then we adapt, Clark finished. Dr. Jackson, I understand the concern. But someone has to clear those platforms, and I'm the only one who can survive in vacuum long enough to do it. Ragnar stepped forward, his staff weapon held with ceremonial precision. The Free Jaffa assault force waits in hyperspace, ready to support once the shield falls. Master Bratak himself leads 3 motherships, captured from the Goa'uld, now serving freedom. When your signal reaches us, we will ensure no reinforcements reach Tartarus. No pressure, Jack muttered. He turned to the assembled team, his voice carrying command authority earned through years of impossible missions. Okay, people, here's how this plays out. Superman takes out the orbital platforms, fast and loud, maximum chaos. That draws Anubis's attention upward. Meanwhile, SG-1, SG-3, and Tartarus operatives gate to the surface coordinates Carter identified, 2 kilometers from the main facility. We approach on foot, infiltrate through the maintenance tunnels Daniel found in the ancient database, and reach the shield generator. Once it's down, we gate directly into the research level, secure the reality bridge, and extract. What could possibly go wrong? Daniel said dryly. Everything, Carter replied honestly. But that's why we bring contingencies. I've programmed emergency gate addresses into everyone's GDO. If we get separated, fall back to Alpha Site and regroup. Clark listened to the planning, impressed by their professionalism. These people routinely faced overwhelming odds with nothing but conventional weapons, tactical brilliance, and unshakable courage. He'd fought alongside the Justice League, Earth's mightiest heroes, but there was something different about SG-1, they were human, mostly, they could die, and they kept stepping through that gate anyway. 2 minutes to insertion point, the Teltac pilot announced. The team moved into position. Clark positioned himself near the cargo door, ready to launch the moment it opened. His enhanced hearing picked up elevated heartbeats, adrenaline spikes, normal human fear responses that his teammates channeled into focus rather than paralysis. Superman, Jack said quietly, moving beside him. When you're up there punching space stations, remember, we need you back down here for the extraction. Don't be a hero. Clark smiled slightly. Colonel, I think that ship has sailed. Yeah, well, be a smart hero then. The kind that lives to file boring mission reports. The Teltac shuddered as it crossed into Tartarus's gravity well. Alarms immediately shrieked, the orbital platforms had detected their approach despite the cloaking device. They've modified their sensors. Carter shouted. Anubis knew we'd use Tartarus stealth tech. He's compensated. Plans compromised, Reynolds barked. Recommend immediate. No, Clark interrupted, his voice calm but absolute. We commit. Open the cargo door. The pilot hesitated, looking to Jack for confirmation. Jack studied Clark for 1 heartbeat, 2, then nodded. You heard the man. Drop the door. Atmosphere screamed out as the cargo door opened, revealing the black of space and, far below, the planet Tartarus, a barren world of red rock and ancient ruins, valuable only for the ancient outpost Anubis had converted into his research facility. And between the Teltac and the planet, 6 orbital platforms swiveled to target the intruding ship, weapons charging. Clark didn't wait for them to fire. He launched from the cargo hold, accelerating to combat speed in seconds. The first platform's main cannon fired, a brilliant lance of energy designed to vaporize capital ships. Clark barrel rolled around it, the heat washing over him harmlessly, and slammed fist first into the platform's primary reactor housing. Metal sheared. Conduits ruptured. The platform's power core went critical, and Clark was already moving to the second platform before the first exploded behind him. The remaining 5 platforms adjusted their targeting protocols, their ancient enhanced AI recognizing that point defense against a single fast-moving target was futile. Instead, they coordinated their fire, creating overlapping kill zones designed to catch Clark regardless of his evasion pattern. Smart. Anubis had learned from their first encounter. Energy bolts filled the space around Clark, forcing him to weave through 3-dimensional terrain of lethal fire. His invulnerability protected him from glancing hits, but concentrated fire from multiple directions could potentially overwhelm even Kryptonian durability. He needed to end this quickly. Clark used his heat vision, twin beams of concentrated solar energy lancing out to strike the weapons arrays of platforms 3 and 4 simultaneously. The precision required was immense, targeting critical systems on structures kilometers apart while moving at hypersonic speeds, but his Kryptonian eyes had evolved for exactly this kind of combat calculation. Both platforms' weapons went offline. 2 down by explosion, 2 disabled. 2 remaining. The 5th platform did something unexpected. It launched dozens of small drones, each one barely larger than a basketball, that spread out in a spherical pattern around Clark. Before he could react, they detonated simultaneously. Not explosions. Naquadah-enhanced electromagnetic pulses, designed to disrupt technology and energy fields. Clark felt his solar-powered cells stutter, his energy absorption interrupted for several seconds. It wasn't true damage, his biology recovered almost instantly, but it created an opening. The 6th platform fired not at Clark, but at the Teltac carrying his team. No. Clark's shout echoed across the radio frequency as he pushed his speed to the absolute limit, intercepting the energy blast intended for the cargo ship. The staff cannon's discharge hit him full force, the impact like being struck by a collapsing star. He tumbled through space, his invulnerability holding but his momentum completely disrupted. Below, the Teltac's pilot executed emergency evasive maneuvers, the ship diving toward Tartarus's atmosphere. "Superman, are you okay?" Carter's voice crackled through his radio beacon. "Fine," Clark gasped, reorienting himself. "Get to the surface, I'll finish the platforms." But he'd lost precious seconds, and Anubis's forces had used them well. The 5th and 6th platforms, rather than continuing to engage Clark, had shifted their fire pattern to create a defensive screen over the facility's shield generator. They weren't trying to kill him anymore, they were preventing him from completing his objective. "Carter, they're protecting the shield generator," Clark reported. "I can take out the platforms, but the facility will have time to mobilize full defenses." "Negative, we're committed." Jack's voice came back. "SG-1 is through the ring transporter, we're on the surface. Take out those platforms and get down here. We'll handle ground defenses." Clark didn't waste time arguing. He accelerated toward the 5th platform, using his freeze breath to create ice crystals that scattered the tracking sensor's targeting solutions, then tore into the platform's hull with his bare hands. The structure came apart like paper, its internal systems no match for Kryptonian strength applied with surgical precision. The 6th platform, now alone, made a desperate gambit. It abandoned defensive protocols entirely and fired everything it had, not at Clark, but at the planet's surface, at the coordinates where his team had just landed. Clark's enhanced vision saw the trajectory instantly. The orbital bombardment would strike in 15 seconds, creating a crater 2 kilometers wide, vaporizing SG-1, SG-3, and every member of the assault force. He couldn't reach the platform and disable it in time. But he could intercept the fire. Clark positioned himself in the bombardment's path and braced. 12 ship-killer energy blasts designed to sterilize landing zones hit Superman simultaneously. The combined force would have destroyed a Hatak mothership. Clark's invulnerability strained under the assault, his cells working overtime to convert and disperse energy that wanted to annihilate him at the atomic level. His costume burned away in places. His cape disintegrated entirely. The symbol on his chest glowed white-hot. But he held. When the bombardment ended, Clark hung in space, smoke rising from his body, every nerve ending screaming. Below, his team was safe. The 6th platform, having expended its ammunition in the desperate barrage, sat defenseless. Clark destroyed it with a single punch, his anger at being used as a target override fueling strength he'd been carefully moderating. 6 platforms eliminated. The orbital space above Tartarus was clear. "Superman to ground team," Clark transmitted, his voice raw. "Platforms neutralized. Coming to your position." "Copy that," Jack replied. "And Clark? Thanks for the save. We saw the bombardment on sensors, that was some serious tanking. Clark didn't respond, already diving toward the planet's surface. His solar absorption was working to repair the damage, but the concentrated fire had depleted his reserves more than he'd anticipated. He needed to be more careful. Anubis's weapons, enhanced with ancient knowledge, could actually hurt him if applied correctly. He landed 2 kilometers from the facility in a crater of his own making, the impact sending shockwaves across the barren terrain. SG-1 and SG-3 were pinned down in a rocky outcropping, exchanging fire with Jaffa patrols that had responded to the orbital battle. Fashionably late as always, Jack called, firing his P-90 in controlled bursts. "Nice entrance. You look terrible, by the way." Clark glanced down at his tattered suit, the symbol on his chest barely visible through scorch marks and torn fabric. "Still functional. Where's the shield generator?" Carter pulled up a tactical display on her scanner. 1 kilometer northeast, inside the main facility's perimeter. "But Clark, the energy readings from underground are spiking. Whatever's happening with the reality bridge, it's activating." "Anubis is expecting us," TLC stated calmly, his staff weapon providing covering fire. "This facility is a trap." "Of course it is," Daniel muttered, translating ancient symbols on a nearby obelisk. "But according to this, there's another entrance, a maintenance shaft the ancients built for service access. It bypasses the main defenses and leads directly to the research level." "How convenient," Jack said suspiciously. "An undefended entrance that Anubis definitely doesn't know about." "I didn't say undefended," Daniel corrected. "I said it bypasses the main defenses." "There's still, oh, that's not good." "What's not good?" Reynolds demanded. "The shaft is protected by an ancient security system. Specifically, one designed to test worthiness. Only those carrying the ATA gene can pass without being, quote, cleansed of unworthy essence." Everyone looked at Clark. "So I go alone," Clark said, understanding immediately. "I'm the only one who can safely use the ancient entrance." "Absolutely not," Jack said flatly. "We don't split the party in the final boss's lair. That's basic tactics." "Colonel, we don't have a choice," Carter argued. "The shield generator is too well defended for a frontal assault, and the reality bridge is activating. If Anubis opens dimensional gateways before we stop him." A massive energy pulse erupted from the facility's underground levels, visible as a column of light that pierced the sky. Reality warped around it, and through the distortion, Clark's enhanced vision saw movement, shapes pulling themselves through from other dimensions. "The harvesters," Clark breathed. "He's summoning the harvesters." Anubis's voice boomed across all frequencies, amplified by technology and power that transcended either. "Kal-El. You destroyed my beacon, denied my rightful conquest, and defied my divine authority. Now witness the price of your defiance. I have called forth the harvesters themselves. They come to evaluate this dimension, and they shall find it wanting. Every world, every civilization, consumed. Unless..." The transmission paused for dramatic effect. "Unless you surrender yourself to me now. Become my host willingly, and I will close the gateway. Refuse, and billions die as this galaxy becomes the harvester's feeding ground. You have 1 hour to decide if you are truly the hero they believe you to be." The transmission ended, leaving only the sound of weapons fire and the reality-warping pulse of the dimensional gateway. Jack broke the silence. "Well, that's just great. Evil monologue and ultimatum. Really bringing his A-game today." But Clark wasn't listening. He stared at the column of light, at the crystalline beings beginning to materialize around it, at the reality bridge that could send him home or save this galaxy, but apparently not both. The choice Daniel's translation had warned about was here. And Superman had 1 hour to make it. Clark stood at the entrance to the ancient maintenance shaft, the tunnel descending into darkness lit only by faint bioluminescent symbols. Behind him, SG-1 maintained defensive positions against advancing Jaffa forces while the sky above Tartarus fractured with dimensional instability. Crystallin harvesters materialized in increasing numbers, their alien geometries testing this reality's physical laws. "You have 45 minutes before those things achieve critical mass," Carter called, firing controlled bursts at approaching death gliders. "Once the harvesters establish dimensional anchors, closing the gateway won't stop them, they'll have permanent access to this reality." "Then I'd better hurry," Clark replied, preparing to enter the shaft. TLC moved beside him, staff weapon held with warrior's precision. "Kal-El, Anubis has orchestrated this confrontation with purpose. He knows you will not allow billions to die. He has created the perfect trap, your compassion becomes the weapon used against you." "That's his mistake," Clark said quietly. "He thinks compassion is weakness. But it's the reason I'll find a way to beat him." "Clark," Daniel stepped forward, his academic mind working frantically, "I've been studying the ancient text about the reality bridge. There might be another option. If you can access the device's core systems, you could potentially reprogram it, turn it from a dimensional gateway into a dimensional barrier. Seal this reality off from the harvesters permanently. And destroy my way home in the process," Clark finished, understanding immediately. Daniel's expression carried sympathy and regret. "Yes. I'm sorry. But it's the only solution I can see that doesn't involve you sacrificing yourself to Anubis or letting the harvesters consume the galaxy." Clark looked at each member of SG-1, Jack with his tactical mind and protective instincts, Carter with her brilliant scientific compassion, Daniel with his archaeological wisdom and moral clarity, TLC with his warrior's honor and hard-won freedom. In 3 days, these people had become more than allies. They'd become friends worth fighting for. "If that's what it takes," Clark said, his voice carrying absolute certainty, "then that's what I'll do. My parents taught me that with great power comes great responsibility. This galaxy needs protection more than I need a way home." Jack grabbed his shoulder, expression serious for once without the protective layer of sarcasm. "Superman, don't make that call yet. Get down there, assess the situation, and if there's any way to save both your ticket home and stop Anubis, you take it. That's an order." "I'm not actually under your command, Colonel," Clark pointed out. "Yeah, well, pretend you are. It'll make me feel better." A massive explosion rocked the facility as Free Jaffa forces engaged Anubis's garrison on the facility's western perimeter. Ragnor's voice crackled over the radio. "SG-1, we have breached the outer defenses. But Anubis's personal guard has deployed, these warriors fight with fanatical devotion. We cannot hold long." "Then I'm out of time," Clark said. He looked at his team one last time. "When I shut down that gateway, get everyone through the Stargate and collapse it behind you. Don't wait for me." "Not happening," Jack said flatly. "We came in together, we leave together. That's how SG-1 works." Clark didn't argue, knowing he'd never convince O'Neill to abandon him. Instead, he simply nodded and descended into the ancient shaft. The tunnel spiraled downward, the bioluminescent symbols growing brighter as he progressed. His enhanced vision detected security systems, energy fields, automated defenses, containment protocols designed by the ancients to protect their most dangerous research. But as Daniel had predicted, his ATA gene compatibility allowed him to pass safely, the systems recognizing him as authorized personnel. 300 meters down, the shaft opened into a vast underground chamber that took Clark's breath away. The reality bridge dominated the space, a massive structure of crystalline technology and quantum field generators that made even ancient gate technology look primitive. Dimensional energy pulsed through conduits that shouldn't exist in normal spacetime, creating localized distortions where multiple realities overlapped. And at the chamber's center, surrounded by monitoring equipment and Goa'uld control systems grafted onto ancient technology, stood Anubis. Or what Anubis had become. The half-ascended being bore little resemblance to a normal Goa'uld. His form flickered between physical and energy states, neither fully one nor the other. Robes of darkness wrapped around him, and where his face should be, there was only void, a blackness that suggested the ancients had punished him for his transgressions by making him something less than fully real. Kal-El, Anubis's layered voice resonated through the chamber, technology and ascended power intertwined. You came, as I knew you would. The Kryptonian prophecy spoke truly, you are hope incarnate, the warrior who cannot abandon the innocent. The prophecy also said I'd be the key, Clark replied, landing in the chamber and assessing the situation with superhuman speed. 50 Jaffa in the chamber, their weapons trained on him. The reality bridge operating at 73% capacity and climbing. Harvesters beginning to establish dimensional anchors topside. And Anubis himself, unpredictable and dangerous in ways Clark didn't fully understand. But it didn't say I'd be your key, Anubis. I'm here to shut this down. Are you? Anubis gestured, and holographic displays materialized showing the battle above, free Jaffa forces being pushed back, harvesters multiplying, SG-1 running low on ammunition. In 17 minutes, the harvesters will achieve critical mass. In 30 minutes, they will have consumed this planet. In 3 days, the nearest inhabited worlds. In a month, the galaxy. Only I can close the gateway, but I will do so only if you willingly become my host. You're lying, Clark said. You can't control the harvesters. You summoned them thinking you could negotiate with interdimensional predators, and now they're out of control. A flicker of something, frustration. Anger, crossed Anubis's void-like face. Partially correct. The harvesters resist my authority, true. But I possess ancient knowledge sufficient to close the gateway, knowledge you lack. So the choice remains, become my host and I close the rift, or refuse and watch this reality die. Clark's enhanced hearing detected Carter's voice through his radio beacon, faint but present. Clark, if you can hear me, I've analyzed the gateway's energy signature. Anubis is lying. The control protocols are automated ancient systems. Anyone with the ATA gene can trigger the shutdown sequence. You don't need him. Relief flooded through Clark, followed immediately by tactical assessment. If he could reach the control systems, he could shut down the gateway himself. But 50 Jaffa stood between him and the controls, and Anubis possessed powers Clark didn't fully understand, half-ascended meant abilities that transcended normal physics. Last chance, Kryptonian, Anubis said, his voice carrying finality. Submit, or. Clark's heat vision lanced out, striking the nearest control console. Ancient systems sparked and failed, and the reality bridge's power output dropped by 15%. Option 3, Clark said. I destroy your controls and shut this down manually. Anubis screamed in rage, a sound that transcended audio frequencies, resonating with dimensional harmonics that made reality itself shudder. Jaffa, Kree. Destroy him. 50 staff weapons fired simultaneously. Clark weathered the barrage, using his invulnerability as a shield while his heat vision systematically destroyed control consoles. The Jaffa's weapons couldn't hurt him, but their concentrated fire prevented him from advancing toward the main control cluster. Then Anubis himself attacked. The half-ascended being moved with impossible speed, his partially phased form passing through Clark's attempted counterpunch. Anubis's hand, more energy than matter, gripped Clark's throat, and suddenly Clark felt his solar energy being drained, siphoned away by ascended knowledge that understood Kryptonian biology on a quantum level. You see. Anubis hissed, his void face inches from Clark's. I have studied you, Kal-El. Every scan of your battles, every energy signature, every cellular response. I know your weaknesses now, dimensional energy disrupts your solar absorption. And I am half-dimensional energy myself. Clark's strength flagged as his power drained. He tried to break free, but Anubis's grip was like holding on to reality itself, there was nothing solid to push against. His vision blurred, consciousness wavering. Through the haze, he heard Jack's voice over the radio, Superman, sit rep. We're reading massive energy fluctuations, "Are you okay down there?" Clark couldn't respond, his vocal cords paralyzed by Anubis's energy drain. The reality bridge continued its countdown to harvester critical mass. 15 minutes remaining. He was failing. His hand brushed against something on his belt, Carter's radio beacon. Not just a communication device, he suddenly realized. It was ancient technology, powered by naquadah generators, emitting a specific frequency. A frequency Anubis's half-ascended form resonated with. Clark gripped the beacon and crushed it, releasing all its stored energy in a single burst of naquadah radiation. The effect on Anubis was immediate and catastrophic. His half-phased form destabilized, the energy state he existed in disrupted by technology designed to interact with ascended beings. Anubis released Clark with a shriek, his form flickering violently between physical and energy states. "What have you done?" Adapted, Clark gasped, his solar absorption immediately beginning to recover now that the drain had stopped. "You're not the only one who studies their enemies, Anubis." He didn't give the half-ascended being time to recover. Clark launched himself toward the main control cluster, his fists tearing through Goa'uld technology grafted onto ancient systems. Jaffa tried to stop him, their weapons fire intensifying, but he ignored them, focused solely on reaching the reality bridge's core controls. His fingers found the ancient interface, and knowledge flooded his mind, the ATA gene activating latent protocols, downloading operational parameters directly into his consciousness. He understood instantly what Daniel had suggested, he could reprogram the device, turn the dimensional gateway into a barrier. But doing so would destroy the bridge permanently. No way home. Ever. Clark. Carter's voice came through on emergency frequencies. "The harvesters have reached critical mass. You're out of time." Above ground, crystalline beings swarmed across Tartarus's surface, their numbers multiplying exponentially. SG-1 fell back toward the Stargate, fighting a desperate retreat. Free Jaffa warriors died buying seconds for evacuation. And across the galaxy, sensors detected dimensional rifts opening on other worlds, the harvesters spreading, beginning their evaluation of this reality's worth. Clark's hands hovered over the controls. One command would seal the gateway, trap him here forever, but save billions. Another might preserve the bridge, give him hope of return, but risk the harvesters establishing permanent access. He thought of his parents, Jonathan and Martha Kent, who'd raised him to always do what was right, even when it cost everything. He thought of Lois, Perry, Jimmy, his life in Metropolis. He thought of the Justice League, his responsibilities on his Earth. Then he thought of TLC, who'd spent decades enslaved before finding freedom. Of Daniel, who'd lost his wife to the Goa'uld and kept fighting. Of Carter, brilliant and compassionate, using science to save worlds. Of Jack, who led impossible missions because someone had to. Of the Jaffa Rebellion, finding hope in his symbol. Of countless billions enslaved across this galaxy, waiting for liberation that might never come. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. Clark activated the reprogramming sequence, his ATA gene interfacing with ancient systems to rewrite fundamental protocols. The reality bridge shuddered, its purpose shifting from gateway to barrier. Dimensional energy that had been reaching outward now collapsed inward, creating a quantum seal that would prevent interdimensional access to this reality for millennia. Above ground, the harvesters shrieked as their connection to their home dimension severed. Without dimensional anchors, they began to dissolve, pulled back to their native reality by forces even they couldn't resist. Within seconds, Tartarus's sky cleared, the crystalline beings banished. In the underground chamber, the reality bridge began its death throes. Control systems overloaded, power conduits ruptured, and dimensional energy that had been carefully contained started to explode outward in an uncontrolled chain reaction. No! Anubis screamed, his form destabilizing further as the facility that had been his greatest achievement crumbled. "You've doomed yourself, Kryptonian. Without the bridge, you'll never return home. You've sacrificed everything for a galaxy that isn't even yours." "That's where you're wrong," Clark said quietly, moving toward the chamber's exit as explosions rippled through the facility. Everywhere people need help is mine to protect. That's what it means to be Superman. He launched upward through the maintenance shaft, moving faster than the explosions could follow. Behind him, Anubis's rage-filled screams echoed through collapsing tunnels. The half-ascended being would likely survive. Beings like him were hard to kill, but his research, his dimensional gateway, his plans for infinite conquest were buried under tons of ancient ruins. Clark emerged onto Tartarus's surface to find SG-1 holding defensive positions at the Stargate, the last few free Jaffa warriors boarding Hatak ships for evacuation. Jack's face showed relief when he spotted Superman. "The gateway?" Jack called. "Sealed permanently," Clark reported, landing beside them. "The harvesters are gone, and Anubis's research is destroyed." "And your way home?" Daniel asked, though his expression suggested he already knew the answer. Clark looked at the symbol on his chest, torn, scorched, but still visible. Still meaning hope, even if that hope now belonged to a different Earth than the one he'd been born on. "Gone," he said simply. But it was the right choice. Carter stepped forward, her scanner detecting the facility's complete collapse underground. "Clark, I'm so sorry. We'll keep looking, maybe there's another way, another device." "Maybe," Clark agreed. "But right now, there's work to do here. The Goa'uld still enslave billions. The Jaffa rebellion needs support. And apparently, I'm supposed to meet Master Bratak at Dakra." Jack studied him for a long moment, then extended his hand. "Welcome to permanent duty at Stargate Command, Superman. You're officially stuck with us." Clark shook his hand firmly, managing a slight smile despite the weight of what he'd sacrificed. "I can think of worse assignments, Colonel." TLC pressed his fist to his chest in formal salute. "You have honored the Jaffa with your sacrifice, Kal-El. The free Jaffa nation will remember that you chose our freedom over your own homecoming. That is the mark of a true warrior." As they gated back to Earth, leaving Tartarus and its buried secrets behind, Clark allowed himself one moment of grief for the life he'd left behind. His parents would understand, they'd raised him to protect people, and that's exactly what he'd done. But grief was a luxury he couldn't afford long. This galaxy needed Superman, whether it was his native one or not. And somewhere in the ruins of Tartarus, Anubis dragged himself from the wreckage, his half-ascended form damaged but functional. The Kryptonian had won this battle, but the war was far from over. Next time, Anubis would be prepared. Next time, he would have weapons designed specifically to counter Kryptonian biology. Next time, Superman would fall. And all the hope he represented would die with him. 3 weeks after Tartarus, Clark Kent stood in SGC's gate room, watching another team depart for another mission to another world. The symbol on his chest had been repaired. Dr. Fraser had worked with Samantha Carter to create a new suit using material that could withstand staff weapons and dimensional energy, colored in the red and blue that had become synonymous with hope across 24 worlds. The Jaffa rebellion had grown stronger, inspired by the warrior who'd sacrificed his home to save theirs. System Lords whispered fearfully about the Kryptonian, debating whether to unite against him or seek accommodation. The Tartarus had shared technology and intelligence, recognizing Superman as the catalyst that might finally tip the balance against Goa'uld tyranny. And SG-1 had gained a permanent member, one who could fly through space, punch through Hatak motherships, and still stop to help Daniel translate ancient text or listen to Jack's complaints about military bureaucracy. General Hammond approached, carrying orders stamped with presidential authorization. "Mr. Kent, effective immediately, you're assigned to Stargate Command with the rank of Special Consultant. You'll accompany SG-1 on missions requiring unconventional problem-solving." "Thank you, General," Clark said, accepting the orders that made his presence here official. "I won't let you down. I know you won't. Because that's who you are, on any Earth, in any dimension." Hammond's expression softened slightly. "We'll keep searching for a way to send you home. But until then, you have a place here. A purpose. Clark looked through the Stargate as it disengaged, that beautiful blue shimmer fading. Somewhere across the galaxy, people were enslaved by false gods. Somewhere, Jaffa warriors were learning they could be free. Somewhere, worlds needed a protector who would stand between them and tyranny, asking nothing in return but the chance to help. The symbol on his chest, Hope, had found a new home. And Superman had found a new mission. Jack's voice crackled over the intercom. Superman, briefing room. We've got intel on a Goa'uld facility conducting genetic experiments. Figured you'd want in on shutting that down. Clark smiled, heading toward the briefing room where his team waited. His Earth would always be in his heart, his parents' lessons guiding every choice. But this Earth, this galaxy, these people fighting for freedom, they needed him now. And Superman never walked away from people who needed help. The Stargate would connect him to thousands of worlds. Each one an opportunity to make a difference, to prove that genuine power serves others rather than enslaving them. The ancients had left behind technology that spanned galaxies. The Goa'uld had built empires on fear and lies. But Superman would build something better, a legacy of hope that transcended dimensions. Because whether he wore the symbol in Metropolis or at Stargate Command, Clark Kent was always, and would always be, Earth's protector. All Earths. Every Earth that needed someone to stand against the darkness and say, with absolute conviction, not today. Not while I can still fight. The gate room doors closed behind him as he joined SG-1, ready for whatever mission came next. Ready to explore strange new worlds, to stand against false gods, to prove that hope, true hope, could never be conquered or contained. It could only spread, one world at a time, until an entire galaxy looked up at the stars and knew, they were not alone. Someone was out there, fighting for their freedom. And his symbol was hope. Indeed. More stories await.